621. Magical juice, repair the jade disc. Will is revived, strength is increased. You think it's worth a try. Your Tao body once again entered Jianmu's internal space through a flaw. However, how to extract the sap from the tree heart is a bit difficult. You took out the god-slaying spear, and it took half a month to barely break the skin of the tree heart, allowing it to release a drop of sap. This sap contains powerful vitality and destiny power. Besides, there is also Jianmu's origin power. The origin power of a Chaos Supreme Treasure is already no weaker than Chaos Origin. As the World Tree, Jianmu is even superior to many Chaos Supreme Treasures. Its origin power is also of a higher grade. It is said that Jianmu was conceived in the first epoch, but now you can't help but wonder, can this thing really be conceived in the Chaos Realm? Could it be like the wishing compass, from a mysterious place? With your current strength, it is difficult to deduce its origin. Although you are curious, you did not dwell on it too much. Then you integrated this drop of sap into the jade creation disc fragments, only to see that 4 or 5 jade creation disc fragments actually slowly fused together under this drop of sap. The origin power of this tree heart really has a repairing effect on the Chaos Supreme Treasure fragments. You were invigorated by this sight. If you can fuse all 81 fragments in your hand, you will be able to restore much of the Jade Plate of Fortune's power. By then, you won't have to worry about the myriad form seal anymore. And Mount Tai Immortal Emperor has not reacted until now, so it seems he has acquiesced. Next, you continued to attack the crack you had made earlier, allowing more Jianmu tree heart sap to flow out. When a total of 9 more drops flowed out, the sleeping Jianmu branch seemed to be startled, showing signs of awakening. You stopped and waited for a while. Seeing that it didn't truly awaken, you breathed a sigh of relief. You continued to attack the crack, and after extracting 6 more drops of sap, the entire Jianmu space trembled. This time, the Jianmu will was about to truly awaken. You immediately ran away at the sight. Unexpectedly, this Jianmu will is also a stingy fellow. It's only 16 drops of sap, and it's already about to revive. When you came out, you saw the entire Jianmu divine tree trembling. The worlds within countless leaves experienced earthquakes, causing countless deaths and injuries. A grand aura erupted, giving people the feeling of facing an immortal emperor directly. Who stole my origin? You vaguely heard an old voice roar. But you are a fate master, and your strength has improved so much during this period. The Jianmu will also found it difficult to find your trace. You found a place to hide and began to repair the Jade Plate of Fortune. 1 drop of Jianmu tree heart sap can repair 4 or 5 jade creation disc fragments. The specific number depends on the size of the fragments. All in all, repairing 60 or 70 pieces should not be a problem. The golden figure in the Hongmengdao Palace was also envious, asking if it could be fed a little. It wanted to see if it had any effect on the Hongmengdao Palace. This tree heart sap is very precious and must be used where it matters most. Even if it had an effect, it's impossible to give it now. Because you can't use it at all right now. Using it would easily attract the dark forces. Of course, you couldn't simply and crudely refuse. You said that after you had repaired all the jade creation disc fragments, you would definitely get a few drops for it to taste. Now that the Jianmu will has awakened, it will be difficult to get tree heart sap again in the future. First, give the golden figure a pie to fill its hunger. A year later, a total of 73 jade creation disc fragments, under time acceleration, were repaired into a whole. There are said to be only about 110 jade creation disc fragments in total. This is already more than 3/5 of the amount. The completeness is no worse than the myriad form seal. You finally have a handy weapon. You still need to spend some time refining this damaged Jade Plate of Fortune. In addition, you still have 8 fragments in your hand. See when you can get 2 more drops of sap to fuse them all. Half a year later, you finally refined the damaged Jade Plate of Fortune. With your current strength, you can at least unleash half of its power. It can easily suppress a 10-fold quasi-immortal emperor. Of course, the premise is that the other party does not have similar treasures. However, it is still a bit difficult to kill a 10-fold quasi-immortal emperor. Those who can cultivate to this realm are the most top-tier figures in each epoch. Even immortal emperors may not have their aptitude. What immortal emperors have more than them is just a sliver of luck. Therefore, these people all have endless trump cards. To completely kill them, unless your strength far exceeds the quasi-immortal emperor peak, infinitely close to an immortal emperor, there is hope. After you came out of seclusion, you didn't expect Immortal Emperor to be the first to come knocking. He was furious, questioning what you had done, as his future income from felling Jeonmu had significantly decreased. It seems it really did affect him after all. You thought he had acquiesced to your actions, but it turns out you were overthinking it. Immortal Emperor was still as stingy. You said that you were just curious and attacked Jeonmu a bit. You never expected its will to directly revive. Perhaps its will reviving early caused it to consume a lot of its origin power. Immortal Emperor felt that this reason made some sense. He said, why did you go provoke Jeonmu for no reason? You are truly a scourge. You were not pleased with this. You said that you had helped the human race overcome the crisis of extinction several times, so how were you a scourge? He shouldn't speak nonsense with his eyes open. Immortal Emperor shook his head, sighed, his face full of helplessness. He told you not to provoke Jeonmu anymore in the future. You quickly nodded and said yes. After getting your assurance, he finally left. After he left, the smile on your face faded. Not provoking Jeonmu won't do. The sap from this guy's tree heart can actually repair Chaos Supreme treasures. You simply cannot refuse such a treasure. You still want to repair the complete jade plate of fortune. And the myriad form seal, perhaps it will also have to rely on it for repair in the future. However, Immortal Emperor was actually able to clearly perceive the changes within. Could it be that his future felling of Jeonmu is also for this tree heart sap? You think this might also be an important reason. It should be impossible to get Jeonmu tree heart sap again in a short period of time. Next, it's time to deal with the Tao world. 622. The unlucky six-faced god, the Emperor of the Sky comes out. The alienation plan, the battle against Yuan. With your current strength, you no longer need to fear sky-supporting Emperor and Yuan Shangren. However, if the two of them were to join forces, they could still cause you considerable trouble. Directly seizing it would still be quite difficult. You need to find a way to make them turn on each other first. You pondered for a while and decided to make the six-faced god the breaking point. Though you didn't know why Yuan Shangren would allow him to experience rebirth. He was certainly someone Yuan Shangren valued. If you couldn't use the six-faced god to sow discord between them, you would simply find another method. Soon, you found the six-faced god again. He had now unified the ancient god realm and was truly awe-inspiring. The various ancient gods of the ancient god realm all called him the six-faced god emperor. Whenever he traveled, he was accompanied by a grand retinue. But in your hands, he still had no power to resist. You spirited him away without anyone knowing, and then you transferred the curse from the cursed Immortal Emperor that was on you to him. This curse now posed no threat to you. But for the six-faced god, it was enough to be fatal. You also planted a psychological suggestion in him, telling him to visit the Tao world more often when he had nothing to do. Next, you waited for things to unfold. Half a month later, under your psychological suggestion, the six-faced god entered the Tao world. He didn't know why he went in, he just really wanted to look around. As a quasi-immortal emperor who had already pledged allegiance to the Tao world, he could enter at any time. During this trip, he met several quasi-immortal emperors cultivating in the Tao world. Nothing else happened. Oh, and when passing by the entrance of sky-supporting emperor's residence, he accidentally killed a clumsy servant. The servant was new and looked down on others, telling him not to stand in the way at the entrance. He originally only wanted to injure him and teach him a lesson. Unexpectedly, the other party seemed to be injured and was killed by his palm strike. However, he was ultimately just a servant. His status compared to a quasi-immortal emperor was like heaven and earth. Killing him was no big deal. When sky-supporting emperor came out of seclusion another day, he would just bring a gift and apologize. He believed sky-supporting emperor wouldn't mind. Afterward, the six-faced god left the Tao world and returned to the ancient god realm. Unexpectedly, less than 5 days after his return, he heard that sky-supporting emperor had come out of seclusion. And he had specifically summoned him. See, this is what it means to be valued. The six-faced god immediately rushed to the Tao world. Unexpectedly, sky-supporting emperor had a gloomy face, and the servant's corpse was still on the ground. Sky-supporting emperor suppressed his anger and said, "I heard this person was killed by you." The six-faced god's heart skipped a beat, and he said that he only intended to teach him a lesson at the time, but he didn't expect him to be injured and accidentally killed him. Then, several more people were brought up. Sky-supporting emperor pointed at those people and cursed, these are the young disciples I just took in. As his senior brothers and senior sisters, not only did you not take care of him while I was in seclusion, but you bullied him everywhere and even sent him to guard the entrance. Those people begged for mercy incessantly. Sky-supporting Emperor, however, remained ruthless and banished them to the Xingtian Tower, where they would have to stay for 30,000 years before being released. The six-faced god had also heard of the Xingtian Tower. It was said that Sky-supporting Emperor specially used it to torture his enemies and it had been abandoned for a long time. He never expected that this time, he would send several of his own disciples into it. His heart pounded, he wondered if he would be sent in too. As a quasi-immortal emperor of the first level, he was no different from an ant in front of the tenfold quasi-immortal emperor, Sky-supporting Emperor. Unexpectedly, Sky-supporting Emperor had no intention of sending him in. Instead, he wanted to deal with him with even more brutal methods. He wanted to brand the six-faced god with a slave mark. The six-faced god could not accept this. It was even more unbearable than being killed. But in front of Sky-supporting Emperor, he had no power to resist at all. Just as Sky-supporting Emperor was about to brand him with the slave mark, Di Yuan Shangren suddenly arrived and asked Sky-supporting Emperor to give him face and release the six-faced god. Sky-supporting Emperor said that he was just a guest of the Tao world and should not meddle in others' affairs. Seeing that he refused to back down, Di Yuan Shangren simply made a move, intending to forcibly take the six-faced god away. Doing so was undoubtedly a direct slap to Sky-supporting Emperor's face. The two engaged in a fierce battle within the Tao world. Even outside the Tao world, you could sense the fluctuations of their battle. Sky-supporting Emperor originally thought Di Yuan Shangren was a quasi-immortal emperor of the 9th level, but he never expected his strength to be even higher than his own. He questioned Di Yuan Shangren about his true identity and his purpose in coming to the Tao world. Seeing that Di Yuan Shangren remained silent, Sky-supporting Emperor began to draw upon the power of the Tao world, which was the myriad forms remnant seal. What he didn't expect was that the other party could also use it. But he was clearly the master of the Tao world. Could it be that the other party was a spirit tool? Only a spirit tool would have such a deep-rooted connection with its main body. Di Yuan Shangren said expressionlessly, I originally intended to deal with you later, but since you've jumped out on your own, don't blame this humble Taoist for being ruthless. After speaking, the entire power of the myriad forms remnant seal was unleashed by him. Unrivaled immortal light streaked across the sky, evolving into various destructive attacks. Floods, lightning, volcanoes, earth cracks, meteor showers. At this moment, he was the king of myriad forms. After a long time, everything was calm. And Sky-supporting Emperor was suppressed by countless chains. The other quasi-immortal emperors in the Tao world immediately expressed their willingness to follow Di Yuan Shangren's lead. Di Yuan Shangren, whose face was pale, saw this scene and nodded in satisfaction. Although acting prematurely had consumed a lot of his energy, everything was ultimately resolved smoothly. Not only did he save the six-faced god, but he also successfully gained control of the Tao world. However, at this moment, boom, the Tao world seemed to be under attack, suddenly shaking violently, as if the earth was moving and mountains were swaying. Di Yuan Shangren's face changed, and his gaze penetrated the Tao world's barrier. Outside, a white-clothed youth was madly attacking the myriad forms remnant seal with a large portion of a jade disc in his hand. This person was precisely Lu Changsheng, who had previously captured Lord Golden Sun but had suffered a setback at his hands. It had only been a few short years, yet how could his strength have changed so dramatically? It was already comparable to his peak. He came outside and asked you why you were attacking the Tao world. You said, of course I want to obtain it. Do you think I'm just bored? Arrogant. Di Yuan Shangren snorted coldly, extended his palm, and the entire Tao world transformed into a remnant seal, falling into his hand. Then, holding the remnant seal, he engaged you in a great battle in the void realm. Boom, heaven and earth trembled, the cosmos quaked. You and he fought ferociously, and the void realm disappeared in large swaths as if it were made of paper. 623. The myriad seals are in hand, and the sky is falling. The 6th level of the quasi-immortal emperor suppresses the source of Di. However, after less than half an hour of fighting, Di Yuan Shangren wanted to escape. He had consumed too much in his previous battle with Sky-supporting Emperor, and his strength was less than 70%, so he was no match for you at all. Want to run? This was the best chance to take him down, how could you let him escape? All three of your Tao bodies appeared, and even your main body, which was in seclusion, rushed over. The four of you attacked together, trapping Di Yuan Shangren in the middle. Di Yuan Shangren's face turned ugly, and he threatened you, saying that he was a subordinate of Cursed Tao Immortal Emperor, and if you harmed him, Cursed Tao Immortal Emperor would not let it go. Your eyes lit up when you heard this. You said that you already had a mortal enmity with Cursed Tao Immortal Emperor, so since Di Yuan Shangren was a subordinate of Cursed Tao Immortal Emperor, you could both seize treasure and vent your anger, killing two birds with one stone. Di Yuan Shangren thought you were boasting. You are only a quasi-immortal emperor, what right do you have to be a mortal enemy of an immortal emperor? If that were truly the case, Cursed Tao Immortal Emperor would have taken you down long ago, why would he let you live so long? Regardless of whether he believed it or not. You were getting more and more excited. You beat Di Yuan Shangren so badly that he was miserable. If this continued, he might perish at your hands. You forced me. Di Yuan Shangren used the Myriad Forms Remnant Seal to cast a forbidden technique, forcing back your three Tao bodies. He then used this opportunity to escape into the river of time. He originally wanted to flee back to the 7th epoch, but he only saw rolling black clouds beneath the river of time. He was startled and abandoned this idea. He fled to the more ancient Soul Tao epoch. However, he could not take the Myriad Forms Remnant Seal with him, it was intercepted by you. But he couldn't escape. You had already planted a destiny mark on him, and unless an immortal emperor personally removed it for him, you would find him sooner or later. With the Myriad Forms Remnant Seal in hand, you planned to refine it first. Sealed within it were Sky-supporting Emperor and several low-level quasi-immortal emperors below Quasi-Immortal Emperor 4th Realm. You were very interested in why Sky-supporting Emperor issued the order to exterminate the human race. But he kept his mouth shut. You tried to forcibly search his divine soul, but found a dark aura within his divine soul. His divine soul origin was tainted by darkness at some point, emitting a decaying aura. It wouldn't be long before his entire being would fall into darkness and become a member of the dark forces. Could his desire to annihilate the human race be related to the darkness? You were secretly shocked. According to the original historical trajectory, he did not fall into darkness, but rather died at the hands of Taiyu, who broke through to Immortal Emperor, at the end of the epoch because he stood with the six-faced god. Now that such a change has occurred in him, is the darkness going to strike the third epoch? You sent a Tao body to send Sky-supporting Emperor to the future, entrusting him to Mount Tai Immortal Emperor. This thing in your hands was a ticking time bomb, it was better to let an Immortal Emperor handle it. The other low-level quasi-immortal emperors were branded with slave marks by you to do some dirty and tiring work for you. News soon came from Mount Tai Immortal Emperor, saying that the dark forces had already polluted the Demon Tao era, and there was indeed a trend of them moving further back in time. Your heart tightened, were you going to run away again? However, when the sky falls, Mount Tai Immortal Emperor will bear the brunt. You still decided to refine the Myriad Forms Remnant Seal first. 2 years later, you successfully refined the Myriad Forms Remnant Seal. And you also used destiny power to cleanse the interior of the Myriad Form Seal, washing away the hidden marks left by Di Yuan Shangren. 624. Darkness comes again, to receive the divine light. Sacrifice of fate, 10 years of Immortal Emperor. As you prepared to continue your secluded cultivation, a vast expanse of dark clouds suddenly surged, and a decaying, malevolent aura permeated the surroundings. Darkness had descended. A dark immortal emperor, one you had never seen before, with the head of a tiger and the body of a lion, emerged from the black clouds and sneered, "I've found you." With that, he extended a sharp claw and swiped at you. You hadn't expected the darkness to arrive so swiftly. Since the darkness had revealed itself, you no longer held anything back. Your main body brought out the Hongmeng Dao Palace. Your two clones held the Jade Plate of Fortune and the Myriad Form Seal, respectively. Working together, you actually managed to block that attack. The tiger-headed, lion-bodied Dark Immortal Emperor was somewhat surprised, not expecting your strength to have increased so much in just over a decade. However, that had merely been a casual strike from him. Next, he was going to get serious. He roared, opening his mouth to spit out a black celestial sword, which resembled a black blazing sun, and lunged it at you. The Dark Immortal Emperor's casual strike earlier had already caused you considerable injury. Now, he had brought out his Chaos Supreme treasure, and you knew that this attack was impossible to block, no matter what. Were you, then, destined to perish here? You were unwilling to accept this, and still attacked with all your might. However, you couldn't even manage to obstruct the black celestial sword. How dare you be so arrogant? Just at the critical moment of life and death, Mount Tai Immortal Emperor arrived in time, throwing his Chaos Supreme Treasure, the sky-opening axe, and saving you. Afterward, Taiyu battled the Dark Immortal Emperor. The aftermath of their battle nearly affected half of the Chaos Realm. Just as you were preparing to escape to an even older epoch, a guiding divine light suddenly shot out from the River of Destiny. This was the guiding divine light from the Destiny Divine Hall. The Destiny Divine Hall had been silent for a long time. You had thought it had perished at the hands of the dark forces, but you hadn't expected it to still exist. But, could this be a trap? Were the dark forces using this method to lure you back and then capture you like a turtle in a jar? This possibility was not small. Thus, your main body escaped to the Soul Dao era, allowing only one Dao body to enter the guiding divine light and return to the Destiny Divine Hall. Inside the Destiny Divine Hall, Tianyan Old Man looked at your Dao body, somewhat speechless, not expecting you to even guard against your own people. You gave an awkward smile, saying, "Isn't this just for caution's sake?" Tianyan Old Man told you to quickly have your main body return. He wanted to reverse destiny and send you back to the Immortal Dao era. You said that the Immortal Dao era also had a large number of dark forces, and you had escaped from there. Wouldn't going back be suicide? Tianyan Old Man knew your personality. If he didn't explain clearly, you definitely wouldn't return. He said helplessly, "The dark forces have completely locked onto your location through unknown means. It's useless even if you escape to the Soul Dao era and the Beast Epic." You were secretly astonished. Could all of this be related to Diyuan Shangren? As soon as you captured him, the darkness discovered you. Such a coincidence was impossible. However, you indeed found nothing unusual on him. Diyuan Shangren was a subordinate of the cursed Dao Immortal Emperor. His sudden arrival in the human Dao era was also at the cursed Dao Immortal Emperor's behest. Could it be that he was behind all of this? With a resolute expression, Tianyan Old Man continued, "Currently, this old man can only stake everything, sacrificing all fate masters of the 5 great epochs, to leverage the power of the River of Destiny and hold off the dark forces outside the realm for 10 years. Within these 10 years, you must become an Immortal Emperor, only then will you have a chance to survive. And since you are from the Immortal Dao era, to become an Immortal Emperor, you must return to your own epoch." You were greatly astonished. You hadn't expected Tianyan Old Man to have such immense determination. So, the destruction of the Destiny Divine Hall and the deaths of the Fate Masters were not caused by the dark forces. Instead, they were sacrificed by Tianyan Old Man to assist you. This kindness was simply immeasurable, impossible to repay. Since Tianyan Old Man had said so, your main body no longer hesitated and immediately returned to the Destiny Divine Hall. Although the deaths of the numerous Fate Masters would make you sad and tearful, this was for the future of the Fate Masters, and even if you were sad and tearful, you had to accept it. You excitedly said, "Let's start quickly, or the darkness will come killing." Tianyan Old Man led you to a massive plaza covered with sacrificial formations. Tens of millions of Fate Masters, either willingly or unwillingly, had gathered there. You could see many low-level Fate Masters with cloths stuffed in their mouths. Their eyes were bloodshot as they looked at you, making muffled sounds. Perhaps they wanted to say some encouraging words to you, but Tianyan Old Man was afraid it would affect the sacrifice, so he gagged them. The Lord of the Heavenly Demon Sect was also among the crowd, looking at you with a complex expression. Earlier, he had even had a dispute with you because of the Lord of Dragon Island. He never expected that you would eventually become the hope of all Fate Masters. The Lord of the Heavenly Demon Sect was a Fate Master, and he also knew that, from the perspective of Destiny's trajectory, this was the best solution. As long as you could break through to Immortal Emperor within the next 10 years, they still had hope of resurrection. Just as the sacrifice ritual was about to begin, Tianyan Old Man suddenly frowned. You thought he was going to back out and quickly asked, "What's wrong?" He said that the third Fate Master was missing. He asked the others, and everyone said he had just been there. The third Fate Master had also agreed to the sacrifice long ago. Why disappear at such a crucial moment? Just then, a large expanse of darkness invaded the River of Destiny. It even dyed the golden River of Destiny black. Everyone in the Destiny Divine Hall was shocked and terrified. The coordinates of the Destiny Divine Hall were constantly shifting. How could the darkness find this place so quickly and accurately? At this moment, several powerful figures appeared outside the Destiny Divine Hall. And one of them was precisely the third Fate Master. It seemed that he must have been the one who led the way, bringing the darkness here. Tianyan old man's face was extremely grim, and he angrily shouted, "Third, I have treated you well as your master, why betray us and join the darkness?" The third Fate Master laughed heartily. "Master, you said that only sacrifice offers a glimmer of hope, but isn't joining the darkness also a method? Why should we sacrifice ourselves and place all our hope on that brat? I refuse to accept this." Upon hearing this, before Tianyan old man could speak, you stepped forward. You said that everyone's sacrifice for you, to buy you time for breakthrough, was not for you, but for the common people of the world, for the future of the Fate Masters. This was a great spirit of sacrifice. What right did he, this treacherous, self-serving, despicable, and shameless villain, have to refuse to accept it? 625. Heavenly Power, Devouring Cultivation. Quasi-Immortal Emperor, 8th level, returning to the Immortal Era. The third Fate Master seemed to be stunned by your righteous demeanor and was speechless for a moment. He just pointed at you, his face flushed. However, the two dark creatures beside him both revealed Immortal Emperor auras. One of them said, "Today is the day the Destiny Divine Hall is destroyed, Lu Changsheng, you won't escape either." You told Tianyan old man to quickly think of a solution. You still had to save the common people, so you couldn't die here. Tianyan old man sighed and had you enter the very center of the sacrificial formation. Then, he activated the sacrificial formation. Seeing this, the two dark immortal emperors frantically attacked the Destiny Divine Hall. Cracks continuously appeared on the Destiny Divine Hall. And as one fate cultivator after another sacrificed themselves, the sacrificial formation was also activated. It began to stir the river of destiny. At this moment, the Destiny Divine Hall was breached. Could it be that all their efforts were in vain? You were greatly shocked and were about to flee, but you saw Tianyan old man step forward, fighting the two immortal emperors alone. Damn, when did this old man become so fierce? Did he use some forbidden destiny art, or had he been hiding his strength all along? Although Tianyan old man held back the two immortal emperors, there were still a large number of other dark creatures rushing towards you. Among them, there were over 100 quasi-immortal emperors. There were also several peak quasi-immortal emperors. Everyone was a bit anxious. But seeing your calm expression, with a casual strike, most of these dark quasi-immortal emperors were killed or wounded. The people of the Destiny Divine Hall were also greatly shocked, not expecting your strength to have improved so much during this time. It shouldn't be far from becoming an immortal emperor, right? Seeing your strength, they had more confidence in you, and even the speed of their sacrifice accelerated. When everyone had sacrificed themselves, the river of destiny finally underwent a certain change. It actually began to flow in reverse, surging towards the passage between the Highland Ancestral Land and the Chaos Realm. Not good. Seeing this, the two dark immortal emperors quickly abandoned Tianyan old man and returned to block it. If the river of destiny blocked the passage, they wouldn't be able to return. At that time, they would easily be caught in a trap by the immortal emperors of the Chaos Realm. Your figure also slowly disappeared within the formation. The layout of 9 epochs, it's finally almost here. Tianyan old man looked at your disappearing figure, a meaningful smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. He didn't know if he was saying that your breakthrough to Immortal Emperor was coming soon, or something else was coming soon. Then, his body also transformed into a pure destiny power and merged into the sacrificial formation. Soon after, the river of destiny completely blocked the passage between the Chaos Realm and the Highland Ancestral Land. And you also returned to the present time of the Immortal Tao era. However, during the transmigration process, you discovered that the cultivation of the sacrificed individuals was also within the transmission power. And it could be absorbed by you. There were more than a dozen quasi-immortal emperors among those who sacrificed. Among them, the first Fate Master and the second Fate Master were both tenfold quasi-immortal emperors. Even if this transmission power had to break through the dark resistance of the Demon Tao epoch, it wouldn't be completely exhausted. You absorbed a portion without damaging the transmission power. Your realm began to increase sharply. From 6-fold quasi-immortal emperor, you continued to break through to 8-fold quasi-immortal emperor before stopping. Crossing 2 realms at once saved you countless years of arduous cultivation. Your strength surged again. Even if that tiger-headed, lion-bodied dark immortal emperor from before were to attack you again, you should be able to resist for a few more moments. You felt that this might have been Tianyan old man's deliberate act. He allowed the destiny power of the fate cultivators to stir the river of time, while leaving a portion of the cultivation for you, so that you could break through to Immortal Emperor faster. After meeting him, he truly did his best to help you. His kindness is as vast as the sea, truly as vast as the sea. You simply didn't know how you could ever repay Tianyan Old Man's kindness. Upon returning to the Immortal Tao era, you first observed the passage blocked by the River of Destiny. You found that Tianyan Old Man said it would last for 10 years, but this power could only hold out for 9 years at most. You speculated that this change was likely caused by the betrayal of the third Fate Master. The destiny power on a Fate Master's body is the most concentrated. Throughout history, including you, there have only been 6 Fate Masters. The betrayal of the third Fate Master undoubtedly had a huge impact. That guy was very cautious and did not participate in the siege at that time. He should still be among the dark forces now. Afterward, you began to observe the changes after your departure. The flow of time was parallel. However much time you spent in the past, the same amount of time would pass in the current time. Even if you transmigrated to the node where you left, that time would already be the past. At this moment, more than 10 years had passed since your departure. The Immortal Tao era had undergone considerable changes. Not long after you left, Yuzhan Daozhen became the epic child. 2 years later, the child of extinction was born. If it were an ordinary child of extinction, he would certainly have become a dead soul under Yuzhan Daozhen's palm. But this child of extinction was not simple, he was an old acquaintance of yours. It was none other than the heavenly god from the heavenly palace. According to common sense, both the epic child and the child of extinction are only qualified to be obtained by those born in the current epoch. Yuzhan Daozhen was suspected to have had his star fate transferred by an immortal emperor, which allowed him to qualify as an epic child. As for the heavenly god, according to common sense, he could absolutely not become the child of extinction. Since he could, there must also be an immortal emperor assisting him from behind. It's just unknown which immortal emperor it is. He came from the God Tao era, so could Wild Heaven Emperor be backing him? Concerning immortal emperors, you found it difficult to deduce the specific outcome at your current realm. But you felt that it might not be that simple. Because Wild Heaven Emperor himself was a person who highly valued rules and order. It was unlikely he would do something so out of line. But whether it was or not, you couldn't say for sure. However, you didn't need to think so much. With your current strength, why be polite to the heavenly god? The heavenly god was still staying in the heavenly palace. But every once in a while, he would go to the chaos realm to destroy worlds. After becoming the child of extinction, he finally experienced the long-awaited increase in strength. At this rate, in a few thousand years, he felt he would have hope of breakthrough to Immortal Emperor. Yuzhan Daozhen, of course, would stop him every time. Originally, everyone thought Yuzhan would become an Immortal Emperor. But now that the heavenly god had become the child of extinction, the strength of the two was almost equal. Who would ultimately become the Immortal Emperor became increasingly unpredictable. 626. Suppress Jietian, curse Emperor's conspiracy. Yuzhan is shocked, immortal ancestors trace. On this day, the heavenly god of interception was preparing to once again head to the chaos realm to destroy the world. Suddenly, the void realm rippled like water, and a familiar figure emerged from it. Lu Changsheng, how dare you return? The heavenly god of interception's expression turned cold. In this simulation, you did not join the heavenly palace. But when you left before, you held the Hongmeng Dao Palace and extorted a large sum of treasures from the heavenly palace. These included a Jianmu branch, 3 other items containing destiny power, and 7 jade creation disc fragments. These were all extremely precious items, and at the time, they made his heart bleed. Now that he has become the child of extinction, not only has his life-saving power greatly increased, but his strength has also grown considerably. Even if you have a Chaos Supreme treasure, you can't threaten him. Upon seeing you, he directly charged at you to kill you. He originally thought you would take out the Hongmeng Dao Palace, but he didn't expect that you would just stand there and, with a simple palm, send him flying. How is this possible? Our palace master is the strongest below the Immortal Emperor, only Yuzhan Daozhen can contend with him. Has this Lu Changsheng, perhaps, made a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor? The other people in the heavenly palace were greatly alarmed at the sight, their faces filled with disbelief. However, they did not know. Below the Immortal Emperor, there are also differences. The tenfold quasi-immortal emperor only grasps 10% of the chaos origin. The heavenly god of interception had been a tenfold quasi-immortal emperor for many years and had also become the child of extinction. His strength was equivalent to someone who had grasped 20% of the chaos origin. And your combat power was at least comparable to a strong individual who had grasped 30%, or even more, of the chaos origin. What could he use to fight you? However, the heavenly god of interception refused to believe it and continued to attack you. Then he was knocked down by your palm again. This time, you used most of your power, not only knocking him down but also severely injuring him. However, the heavenly god of interception was repaired by world-destroying power and quickly recovered. He realized the gap between him and you and wanted to flee. As a result, you took out the myriad form seal and directly collected him into it. After suppressing the heavenly god of interception, you plundered all the treasures of the heavenly palace before leaving. Subsequently, you began to search the heavenly god of interception's soul. You discovered that there was indeed an immortal emperor behind him who had changed his destiny, allowing him to obtain the identity of the child of extinction of this epoch. But this immortal emperor was not the wild heaven emperor, but your mortal enemy, the cursed Tao immortal emperor. Why did the cursed Tao immortal emperor do this? According to the heavenly god of interception's memory, he told the heavenly god of interception that he needed more immortal emperor allies. However, you found something strange about it. If he wanted immortal emperor allies, he could have fully supported a quasi-immortal emperor of the curse path. For example, the Curse Alliance Master was no worse than the heavenly god of interception. There was absolutely no need to support the leader of a god Dao realm force in the Dao Ruins realm. You felt that the cursed Dao Immortal Emperor's goal was not that simple. The heavenly god of interception also thought so. But he ultimately could not resist the temptation of making a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor. He agreed to the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor, promising that once he made a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor, he would advance and retreat with the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor. You felt that he had most likely fallen into a trap. In any case, the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor was already your mortal enemy. Being able to suppress the heavenly god of interception and disrupt his plan was not bad. As for whether he himself would attack you, you felt that the possibility was not high. If he could have attacked, he would have done so long ago. The fact that he hasn't attacked yet is most likely due to some kind of restriction. Besides, you also have connections among the immortal emperors. The Mount Tai Immortal Emperor and the Zhu Yan Immortal Emperor are both your good brothers. They wouldn't just stand by and watch him bully you. Oh, and the Zhu Yan Immortal Emperor seemed to have gone missing in the God Dao era. In this current timeline, there is no trace of him. But with the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor present, the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor wouldn't dare to be presumptuous. After all, there's a saying that goes, the older the Immortal Emperor, the stronger they are. The cursed Tao Immortal Emperor is an immortal emperor from the 7th epoch, while the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor originated from the 3rd epoch. The cursed Tao Immortal Emperor is unlikely to be a match for the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor. Afterward, you went to the Immortal Reverence Hall in Yuzan Mountain, Limitless Heaven, Chaos Realm, and found Yuzan Daozan. Yuzan Daozan was lecturing to a group of disciples. As the epic child, he only needed to delay the destruction of the world. With the heavenly god of interception not making a move, his days were quite leisurely. However, he was equally astonished by your arrival. He said that since you had come, you wouldn't be leaving today. The former Yuzan Daozan was unapproachable and out of reach in your presence. Now, you only used a few moves to suppress him. The entire process was smooth and seamless, leaving his immortal venerable disciples dumbfounded. Have you become an immortal emperor? You're actually this powerful. Even Yuzan Daozan had no power to retaliate. However, you had no time to answer their questions. You also plundered Yuzan Mountain before leaving. As you left, you casually killed Jade Universe Celestial Venerable, Yaoqi Jade Mother, and Ba Wu Immortal Venerable. Jade Universe Celestial Venerable and Yaoqi Jade Mother had killed you in previous simulations. Ba Wu Immortal Venerable had constantly bothered you in the last simulation. These 3 guys, you kill them every time you see them. Of course, this is not you holding a grudge, this is you settling karma. Yuzan was once the immortal ancestor's attendant. During your suppression of Yuzan, he surprisingly did not take out the treasures given to him by the immortal ancestor, which made you breathe a sigh of relief. Towards the end of the last simulation, in order to resist the dark immortal emperors, he had taken out an ancient scroll with the character for immortal written on it. This time, he surprisingly didn't take it out. Could it be that he had already used it? Subsequently, you searched Yuzhan's soul and found that the item had not been used. It was just that that item was a life-saving treasure given to him by the immortal ancestor, and it would only be passively activated when he encountered a life-threatening danger. You merely suppressed him, which was not enough to activate that ancient scroll. So that's how it is. It seems that if I want to kill Yuzhan in the future, I'll have to use someone else's hand. Besides that ancient scroll, what interested you most was the true immortal ancestor. The Mount Tai Immortal Emperor had said in the last simulation that he was the closest person to transcending the Immortal Emperor realm, and you wondered what kind of demeanor he possessed. However, regarding the memories of the immortal ancestor, Yuzhan's relevant memories were blurry, making it impossible for you to see them clearly. You only knew that the immortal ancestor had appeared twice. Once was at the beginning of the creation of the profound Tao era, when he saved Yuzhan Daozan, who had almost perished in the creation calamity, and took him as his attendant. However, Yuzhan only served him for a few years before the immortal ancestor disappeared. When he appeared again, it was already the late profound Tao era. He witnessed the destruction of the profound Tao era and then imparted the immortal Tao system to Yuzhan Daozan, instructing him to spread it in the next epoch. Furthermore, the immortal ancestor felt that Yuzhan Daozan's strength was too low, so he conveniently used a great divine power to help him make a breakthrough from the third quasi-immortal emperor to the peak tenfold quasi-immortal emperor. 627. The identity of the immortal ancestor, goodbye to the old boatman. The regret of Jianmu, the method of breaking through the immortal emperor. According to Yuzhan's memories, immortal ancestor found it very easy to enhance his strength. It only took a few breaths to significantly increase his strength. Perhaps even Mount Tai Immortal Emperor of the third epoch couldn't achieve that. From this, the strength of immortal ancestor is evident. He truly is the person closest to transcending the immortal emperor realm. Yuzhan Daozan's memories only contained this much information. However, although you couldn't clearly see immortal ancestor's specific appearance, he vaguely gave you a sense of familiarity. With your strength, it's impossible for you to have an illusion. You must have met this person before. Could it be? A guess vaguely formed in your mind. That is Tianyan old man. This old fellow, this old benefactor, clearly said he wasn't an immortal emperor, yet he was able to fight two dark immortal emperors alone in the end. This was truly too bizarre. You couldn't help but suspect that he is immortal ancestor. After all, immortal ancestor couldn't just appear out of thin air. And Tianyan old man founded the Destiny Divine Hall and lived for 5 epochs. It's possible he secretly achieved a breakthrough to immortal emperor using some method. If it's not Tianyan old man, then it's the oldest and most mysterious Soul Dao Immortal Emperor or Beast Dao Immortal Emperor. Oh, right, according to Yuzhan's memories. The old boatman of Other Shore Sky is also quite mysterious. He suddenly appeared in the 5th epoch. After that, he has been rooted in Other Shore Sky. Other Shore Sky was created by the Demon Path Immortal Emperor. Of course, at that time, it wasn't called Other Shore Sky. It was called Chaos Passage. At the end of each epoch, the old boatman would protect these chaos passages, preventing them from being destroyed. Later, in the early stage of the Immortal Tao era, Yuzhan Daozan built the 9 heavens and 10 earths. He then moved these chaos passages into Other Shore Sky. Yuzhan Daozan also did not know the true origin of the old boatman. Perhaps he is immortal ancestor in disguise. Of course, these are all just your guesses. The next time you see other immortal emperors, you will ask them if you get the chance to see what the origin of immortal ancestor is. As for the old boatman, he has always stayed in Other Shore Sky, and you can go meet him now. However, your Tao body can go. Your main body must cultivate against time now. You only have 9 years. If you can't achieve a breakthrough to immortal emperor within 9 years, when the passages reconnect, then you will either die at the hands of the dark forces, or, like the last simulation, be betrayed by the immortal emperor of the chaos realm. You don't want to experience the exact same death again. With a thought, your Tao body stepped into Other Shore Sky. The old boatman was no longer ferrying, sitting at the bow of the boat smoking a pipe, seemingly having waited for you for a long time. You got on his boat and found that he was only at the quasi-immortal emperor 8th realm. He was not a hidden immortal emperor, and even less likely to be immortal ancestor. You asked him, what exactly is his origin? The old boatman put down his pipe, a look of reminiscence appearing in his eyes. He said he had lived for a very, very long time, so long that he had forgotten his own origin. You told him to be quick and speak plainly. The old boatman said, could it be that you don't recognize him so quickly? You looked him over carefully, indeed you didn't recognize him. The old boatman then said that you once took more than a dozen drops of tree heart sap from his main body. At this, you suddenly understood. So he is the John Muil. The old boatman said, no, to be precise, he is only a remnant of the John Muil. At the end of the third epoch, when Mount Tai Immortal Emperor cut down the Janmu, most of its will was extinguished. He was merely lucky to escape. Later, after 2 epochs, in the 5th Demon Dao epoch, he cultivated to quasi-immortal emperor. And then, after 4 more epochs, he reached his current quasi-immortal emperor 8th realm. You asked him, why does he maintain these passages? He said he just wanted to leave a glimmer of hope for the sentient beings of the Chaos Realm. If one day, the Chaos Realm is completely destroyed and no new epochs are born, they could still go to other places to survive. You asked him, does he not resent Mount Tai Immortal Emperor? He said, what's the use of resentment? I can't defeat him anyway. He has now completely let go. You said, since he has let go, you will test him. With your current strength, how can you obtain all of Janmu's tree heart sap? Old boatman, it seems he hasn't truly let go yet. Otherwise, he wouldn't hesitate. After a long while, the old boatman sighed and said there was no clever trick, only strength. Your previous ability to enter Janmu's internal space was already a trick. You then asked the old boatman, what exactly is Janmu's origin? Was it really created in the first epoch? The old boatman said it should be, as ever since he gained consciousness, it was already the first epoch. He answered 2 questions, yet it seemed he said nothing at all. It left you speechless. You asked the old boatman if he had any good methods for you to achieve a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor within 9 years. The old boatman said, I'm afraid not. If you were an epic child or a child of extinction, perhaps there would still be hope. But the epic child and child of extinction of this epoch have already appeared. Not to mention 9 years, even if you were given 9 million years, it would be very difficult for you to achieve a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor. You raise the god-slaying spear. He knows nothing, so what's the use of keeping him? The old boatman quickly changed his tune, saying he thought of a method. It is rumored that Immortal Ancestor did not achieve a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor as a child of extinction or an epic child. If you can find out how Immortal Ancestor achieved a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor, perhaps there is still a glimmer of hope. But Immortal Ancestor has long since disappeared, where would you find him now? The old boatman asked, Yu Zondausen has already been captured by you, does he also not have any information about Immortal Ancestor's whereabouts? You shook your head and said, no. With that, you raised the god-slaying spear again. The old boatman became anxious and said, young man, don't be in such a hurry. Although Yu Zondausen doesn't know, he knows of one person who is closely related to Immortal Ancestor and must know. You put away the god-slaying spear and asked who it was. The old boatman breathed a sigh of relief and said, it is Xuanpin Immortal Emperor. In fact, Xuanpin Immortal Emperor was already a magic treasure subdued by Immortal Ancestor. With his strength and status, he must know more information. Damn it, you were still planning to subdue the gate of the profound female when you got stronger, but you didn't expect Immortal Ancestor to act so early. Moreover, you didn't find this in Yu Zondausen's memories. Yu Zon only knew that Xuanpin Immortal Emperor had a good relationship with Immortal Ancestor. Could it be that Xuanpin Immortal Emperor felt it was disgraceful and actively erased his own dark history? Or is the old boatman just spouting nonsense to survive? 628. Xuanpin came to the door and made a deal with the Immortal Emperor. Sacrificing cultivation, quasi-Immortal Emperor 10th level. You stroked your chin and ultimately decided to perform a soul search. After the soul search, you found that what the old boatman said was true, so you decided to let him off. You just didn't know where Xuanpin Immortal Emperor was now. It seemed you could only go to the profound Dao era to look for him. Just as your Dao body was about to depart, Xuanpin Immortal Emperor proactively sought out your main body. This time, he came for Yu Zondausen. He coughed and said that he had some acquaintance with Yu Zondausen, hoping you could release Yu Zondausen. You said you could release him, but he had to agree to one condition. Xuanpin Immortal Emperor expressed his willingness to hear the details. You said you heard he had some acquaintance with the Immortal Ancestor, and asked if he could tell you how the Immortal Ancestor achieved a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor. Upon hearing Immortal Ancestor, Xuanpin Immortal Emperor's face darkened, and he said that guy was a scourge. Why would you want to learn from him? It seemed Xuanpin Immortal Emperor held deep prejudices against the immortal ancestor. He probably suffered a lot at his hands in the past. You said your time was limited, and you heard that the immortal ancestor didn't achieve a breakthrough in the traditional way, so you hoped to reference his method. Xuanpin Immortal Emperor reluctantly said, I didn't see how that guy achieved a breakthrough either, but he once mentioned that he fused myriad Tao principles into one furnace to achieve a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor. Upon hearing this, your eyes lit up. Comprehension ability was your strong suit. If this method was feasible, then you could completely follow suit. Xuanpin Immortal Emperor then said, the method has been told, where is Yu Zhan? You tentatively said, if I don't release him, you won't beat me, will you? Xuanpin Immortal Emperor said, that won't happen, because there's an agreement among Immortal Emperors not to casually attack juniors below the Immortal Emperor realm. Upon hearing this, you felt relieved. You said you would release him, but not now, but 9 years later. During these 9 years, you wanted to fully focus on achieving a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor, fearing that releasing Yu Zhan would cause you trouble. Xuanpin Immortal Emperor found this reasonable and said he would come back to find you after 9 years. You sighed. This Xuanpin Immortal Emperor was truly an honest person. You were indeed prepared to try the Immortal Ancestor's breakthrough method he mentioned. However, that would have to wait until your main body cultivated to the peak of tenfold Quasi-Immortal Emperor. Currently, you were still at the 8th layer of Quasi-Immortal Emperor. To cultivate to the peak of tenfold, it would take at least a dozen years, let alone achieving a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor. 9 years was completely insufficient. You suddenly recalled the scene of Tianyan old man extracting cultivation. Since cultivating on your own was too slow, why not devour others' cultivation? This practice was typically done by demonic path cultivators and would harm karma. But you had done so many good deeds before, you should have accumulated a lot of karma, right? Losing a little wouldn't be a big problem. Moreover, you were not doing this for yourself, but for the living beings of the Chaos Realm, to prevent them from being swallowed by darkness. You were making a small sacrifice to avoid a large sacrifice. It might not even harm karma, it might even increase karma. Since that was the case, just do it. You started with Yu Zhan Daozan and Heavenly God Jietian. Both of them were at the peak of Quasi-Immortal Emperor, which should greatly increase your cultivation. As for the method of extracting cultivation, the ordinary demonic path techniques would certainly be useless against a Quasi-Immortal Emperor. You used Tianyan old man's sacrifice formation. Although you only briefly glanced at it at the time, you remembered most of its essence. You engraved it and then perfected it with your heaven-defying comprehension ability. In less than half a month, the sacrifice formation that Tianyan old man had carved in the Destiny Divine Hall reappeared in the world. This formation was indeed extremely marvelous, utilizing various Tao principles to the extreme. Especially the Destiny Tao principles, Chaos Tao principle, and Devouring Tao principles. They were almost perfectly applied. You couldn't help but marvel at Tianyan old man's wisdom. He truly deserved to be the first existence to cultivate into a Fate Master. If you had to create this formation yourself, it would probably take several hundred years. The formation was complete. Next, the sacrifice began. You first sacrificed Heavenly God Jietian. Heavenly God Jietian still maintained a cold demeanor. He was now the child of extinction, besides an Immortal Emperor, who could kill him? He wondered who else could. However, he quickly couldn't maintain his cold demeanor. Because he was placed into the sacrifice formation, and the formation was constantly devouring his cultivation, life origin, and divine soul origin. The world-destroying power, at first, still allowed him to recover. But as time went on, his recovery speed gradually couldn't keep up with his consumption speed. How was this possible? He was greatly alarmed and began to beg for mercy. But you ignored him and continued the sacrifice. This guy was like an experienced baby that constantly regenerated health, providing you with an endless stream of cultivation. In this simulation, you initially thought you wouldn't have the chance to enjoy the benefits brought by the child of extinction. Unexpectedly, you ended up enjoying them in this way. A constantly recovering Heavenly God Jietian was worth more than 10 or 20 peak Quasi-Immortal Emperors. Your cultivation quickly broke through from the 8th layer of Quasi-Immortal Emperor to the 9th layer of Quasi-Immortal Emperor. You finally found the correct way to improve your strength. You felt a bit annoyed with Tianyan old man. Why didn't he bring out this set of sacrifice formations earlier? Otherwise, you would have already reached the peak of tenfold quasi-immortal emperor. Your will was firm. Was he worried you would fall into the demonic path? Time flew by. 5 or 6 days passed like this. You directly broke through to tenfold quasi-immortal emperor. At this point, heavenly god Jayatian was almost completely drained by the sacrifice formation. The world-destroying power on him was also almost exhausted. Looking at heavenly god Jayatian, whose cultivation could no longer recover, you shook your head. This child of extinction was still too weak. You hadn't even reached the peak of tenfold yet. You struck the extremely weak heavenly god Jayatian with a palm, ending his suffering. The child of extinction, thus, fell. The death of the child of extinction was sensed by the experts of the Tao Ruins realm and many immortal emperors. Many people speculated, which immortal emperor made the move. The child of extinction possessed an immortal body. Only an immortal emperor could completely kill the child of extinction. This was an ironclad fact. Although heavenly god Jayatian was in your hands, they still didn't suspect you. Instead, they believed that a certain immortal emperor helped you kill him. Next, it was the turn of Yu Zhandaozhen, this epic child. A trace of fear flashed across Yu Zhandaozhen's face. He said his backing was the immortal ancestor, and if you killed him, the immortal ancestor would not let you off upon his return. You said there was no need to be so nervous, you were only making him sacrifice some cultivation, not taking his life. After speaking, you also threw Yu Zhandaozhen into the sacrifice formation. 629. The peak of the 10th level, sacrifice Yuxuan. The realm cage suppresses the Daoshu realm. A few days later, after Yu Zhandaozhen's cultivation was mostly absorbed. Your cultivation not only reached the peak of tenfold quasi-immortal emperor, but you also felt a sense of ultimate limit, as if there was no further progress to be made. At this time, Yu Zhandaozhen had transformed from a black-haired middle-aged Taoist into a white-haired old man. His epic power was also almost completely depleted. You never expected that you could enjoy the benefits of both the child of extinction and the epic child simultaneously in this manner. However, you wonder if an immortal emperor can be sacrificed. If an immortal emperor were to be sacrificed, would you be able to break through to immortal emperor? This can only be attempted later, it's not possible now. Because you currently cannot defeat an immortal emperor, nor is it possible to capture one. But with your current strength, it would be extremely difficult for an ordinary immortal emperor to kill you. Next, it's time to prepare for the breakthrough to immortal emperor. According to Xuanpin Immortal Emperor, the immortal ancestor once melted myriad laws Tao principle into one furnace, thereby achieving a breakthrough to immortal emperor. You've done this before. You once integrated many Tao principles into the 10,000 laws rule, making it the king of rules. Now, it's equivalent to resuming your old profession. Integrating various Tao principles into the myriad laws Tao principle, to break the limits of the rules of heaven and earth. However, you feel that your comprehension ability needs to be further increased. The Tao Ruins realm still has many treasures that can enhance comprehension ability. They can give you a boost. Also, this Yu Zhandaozhen is an epic child, you wonder if he can be sacrificed. According to past practice, after the child of extinction appears, others lose the ability to sacrifice. Only the child of extinction can continue to sacrifice. However, you feel you can give it a try. You took out the large doomsday altar from your person and threw Yu Zhandaozhen into it. Although you promised Xuanpin Immortal Emperor that you would release him after 9 years. You never said whether you would release him alive or dead. The existence in the dark actually descended again. However, he did not agree to your sacrifice. He told you that since the child of extinction had died, it meant he was out of this epic prematurely. He would no longer bestow any rewards. His words clearly conveyed a feeling of playing a game of chess with someone. You asked him about his true origin, and if he was playing chess with the chaos origin will. He said his origin far surpassed anyone's imagination, and that you have a transcendent mark on you, so perhaps one day you might see his true form. Aside from the 8 phantoms in that mysterious space, this was the first time anyone had mentioned the transcendent mark on your body. Could this guy be in existence on the same level as the 8 phantoms in the mysterious space? As for playing chess, he said he indeed had an opponent. But this opponent was not the Chaos Origin Will. The Chaos Origin Will was like an ant before him, merely a chessboard. His true opponent was the existence behind the epic power. To this day, you finally understand why the Chaos Realm has such strange rules as the Child of Extinction and the Epic Child. It has existed since the beginning of time. Just like an apple falling downwards, few people delve into the reasons behind it. Now it seems that the existence of this rule was not born from the Chaos realm itself, but rather came from the game played by two great figures. The Chaos origin will is on the same level as an Immortal Emperor. To be able to regard him as an ant, these two mysterious great figures are most likely above Immortal Emperors. You just don't know who is stronger or weaker compared to the corpse ancestor of the dark forces. You voiced this question, corpse ancestor. The existence in the dark scoffed, saying, he merely comes from other realms, these realms are like one prison after another, and you are all just. At this point, a thunderbolt flashed through the endless void realm, containing terrifying power, as if it wanted to split the Chaos realm in half. Even as powerful as you, before this thunderbolt, you were as weak as a mortal. The power of this thunderbolt not only shocked you but also startled the Immortal Emperors in the Chaos realm. This is definitely power above an Immortal Emperor. Why would such power suddenly appear in the world? Could it be that besides the corpse ancestor of the dark forces, there are other existences above Immortal Emperors in the world? Yet you felt that this power suddenly appeared, seemingly to warn the existence in the dark not to reveal certain secrets. Indeed, the existence in the dark paused and did not continue speaking. He said to you, I only told you so much because I saw you have a transcendent mark, but how far you can go, and whether you can reach our level, depends on your own fortune. After speaking, he vanished. Although the existence in the dark had left, your heart was surging with emotions, unable to calm down for a long time. The vastness of the world far exceeded your imagination. What realm are the 8 phantoms in that mysterious space and the existence in the dark? Why did the existence in the dark say that realms are prisons? All of this made you extremely curious. However, these things are still too distant for you. For now, you should first break through to Immortal Emperor. The first step to break through to Immortal Emperor, conquer the Tao Ruins realm. Immortal Emperors cannot attack juniors below the Immortal Emperor realm, but you are not yet an Immortal Emperor, so attacking should be fine, right? You sent a Tao body to the Tao Ruins realm to test the waters. Where to start first? You have some acquaintance with Taiyu Immortal Emperor, so let's start with the forces of a good brother. Your Tao body only took a few days to subdue the human forces in the heaven domain. During this process, no Immortal Emperor came out to stop you. It seems they also tacitly approved. Next, you sent all your other 2 Tao bodies in, stirring up waves of bloody storms in the Tao Ruins realm. Treasures that enhance comprehension ability were continuously sent to your main body. In less than half a month, the 9 great domains in the heaven, earth, black, yellow, universe, and primordial eras were all subdued by your Tao body. At the 5th level quasi-immortal emperor, you were already comparable to a 10-fold quasi-immortal emperor. Now that you have reached quasi-immortal emperor perfection, your strength is even more terrifying. Dozens of peak quasi-immortal emperors combined were no match for you. Many people said that you had already achieved an alternative Tao. Throughout history, they had never seen such a powerful quasi-immortal emperor. During the process of subjugation, many forces, seeing that they couldn't defeat you, directly surrendered, choosing to protect themselves. Among them, the Heavenly Palace surrendered the fastest. After all, their palace master, the heaven-intercepting heavenly god, had long been captured by you, and his fate was unknown. Only the Curse Alliance was a bit Shoda, resisting most fiercely. It was only after you killed their alliance master and slaughtered many high-ranking officials that they were forced to submit. 630. The Spy of the Curse Abyss, Unify Daoshu. Coming to the ancestral star, I, Lu, never lie. As for the Curse Abyss you were most concerned about, an internal strife broke out before you even made a move. It is said that the Deputy Abyss Master, Zhou Wuji, was a spy, and he had misled the higher-ups of the Curse Abyss in every way before, which led them to mistakenly kill many people but never find you, the key figure. This news was personally announced by the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor. Zhou Wuji was arrested without even a chance to refute. Fortunately, his cultivation was profound, being a 10-fold quasi-immortal emperor, so although he was captured, he did not die immediately. Your Tao body destroyed the Curse Abyss and rescued him along the way. When Zhou Wuji saw you, before you could ask anything, he immediately knelt down with a thud and said, "My lord, your subordinate has lived up to your trust." You said with interest, "You know me?" Zhou Wuji said, "That's right, it was your lord's patronage back then that allowed me to be where I am today. I am also a chess piece that your lord placed in the Curse Abyss." You performed a soul search on him and found that it was indeed true, it was a scheme set up by your future self. No wonder the curse abyss kept going in circles before, failing to capture you, the main target, but instead eliminating many of your enemies. This Zhou Wuji truly deserves great credit. Since he was one of your own, there was nothing more to say. You made him the new Curse Alliance Master, managing the entire Curse Path force. However, your actions must have severely offended the cursed Dao Immortal Emperor. Anyway, you were already enemies, so you weren't afraid of offending him further. He might be waiting for you to break through to Immortal Emperor to make a move on you. After unifying the Dao Ruins realm, your main body was refining a massive amount of treasures that increased comprehension ability. Your comprehension ability was rapidly increasing every moment. Besides comprehension ability, your Dao body also gathered all the Jade Creation Disc fragments within the Dao Ruins realm. If you had enough Jianmu Tree Heart Sap, you could completely obtain the complete Jade Plate of Fortune. The Jade Plate of Fortune has many uses. It can be used to suppress luck, assist in cultivation, and create all things. The most important use for you is undoubtedly assisting in cultivation. It can not only improve comprehension ability, but also record all innate Dao principles in this epoch, except for the Destiny Dao principles. If you want to fuse thousands of Dao principles, the Jade Plate of Fortune is undoubtedly extremely suitable for you. Even if some parts are still fragments, it can increase your cultivation progress by several times. If you could possess the complete Jade Plate of Fortune, increasing your cultivation speed by more than 10 times would not be a problem. However, obtaining more Jianmu Tree Heart Sap. The obstacle of the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor is not easy to overcome. Although you treat him as a brother, he still guards against you. Hopefully, one day, he will be completely open with you. Oh, right, you thought of the Ancestral Star. Within the human Dao era territory of the Dao Ruins realm, there were no legacy forces left by the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor. His legacy forces are likely mostly on the Ancestral Star. Who knows if there is any extra tree heart sap there? The Ancestral Star's concealment, of course, was for immortal lords and some quasi-immortal emperors. With your current strength, no matter how concealed the Ancestral Star is, it cannot escape your Dharma eye. The Ancestral Star also seemed to be aware of the changes in the Chaos Realm and the Dao Ruins realm. Recently, it had closed the passages on the Earth Star. Your Dao body used the Eye of Illusory Breaking to search every inch of space in the Chaos Realm. Finally, in the 8th layer of space in the Chaos Realm, the location of the Ancestral Star was found. It was a gigantic planet enveloped by an Immortal Emperor formation, precisely the Great Wilderness Star of the Third Epoch, magnified countless times. Its size was already no smaller than the 7th heaven, truly terrifying. There were hundreds of immortal lords and over 20 quasi-immortal emperors among them. Among them, 3 were even tenfold quasi-immortal emperor powerhouses. Such a lineup, placed in the Dao Ruins realm, would be an absolute hegemonic force. It was no worse than the Soul Hall of the Soul Dao era. It was much stronger than the Heavenly Palace. But to you, they were still just a group of slightly larger ants. What made your eyes light up was that you actually found 5 drops of Jianmu Tree Heart Sap on the Ancestral Star. It was just that the Immortal Emperor formation outside the Ancestral Star was a bit troublesome and would require some effort. But this was a minor issue. As long as the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor did not appear, everything would be fine. Your Dao body began to move towards the Ancestral Star. Whether you could get it or not, you definitely had to try first. Soon, your Dao body arrived outside the Ancestral Star and began to attack the formation. Oh no, Lu Chengsheng is here. He has already unified the Dao Ruins realm, does he still want to attack our human race's Ancestral Star? Many people looked up at the sky, watching your gigantic phantom, filled with fear and unease. Soon, the 3 tenfold quasi-immortal emperor powerhouses from the Ancestral Star soared into the sky and arrived before your Dao body. One of them was a familiar face to you, none other than human Emperor Fuxi, whom you had seen in the human Dao era. He was already old and frail at the time, and according to the historical trajectory, he would die not long after. Now that he was still alive, he must have been resurrected by the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor. As long as it wasn't resurrecting a quasi-immortal emperor, resurrecting others was not difficult for an immortal emperor. When human Emperor Fuxi died, he wasn't even an immortal lord, let alone a quasi-immortal emperor. Of course, even if it was a quasi-immortal emperor, as long as the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor was willing to pay a certain price, he could still be resurrected. This was the domineering nature of an immortal emperor. Human Emperor Fuxi said to you, "We are both of the human race, why must we resort to such a large conflict?" You said that you and the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor were brothers, and you were not here to cause trouble today. Everyone's expression stiffened. If you and Mount Tai were brothers, then what did that make them? Did they all become your juniors? Moreover, the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor had never said that he had a brother like you. Of course, whether it was true or not didn't matter, they didn't dare to refute anyway. Instead, they went along with it. Human Emperor Fuxi said, "Since that's the case, we are all one family, so let's discuss whatever matters there are." You said that your main purpose for coming this time was to obtain those 5 drops of Jeonmu tree heart sap. Everyone's expressions changed. Seeing this, you waved your hand and said, "Don't misunderstand, I'm not here to steal. I have already greeted the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor, and he told me to come and retrieve them." Everyone exchanged glances. That was an extremely precious substance, even immortal emperors coveted it, so would the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor truly be willing to hand it over? Human Emperor Fuxi asked you to wait a moment, saying he needed to burn incense and consult the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor. Now it was your turn for your expression to change. You said angrily, "My words, Lu, are as good as gold, never false. Do you suspect that what I said is fake?" The 3 top powerhouses of the ancestral star remained silent. Your words, Lu Changsheng, were notorious. They simply dared not believe you. Good, good, good. You laughed in extreme anger. Since there was no basic trust between people, then don't blame you for being impolite. 631. 3 drops of juice, the god of creation. The Immortal Emperor's enlightenment, the Curse Emperor's action. You took out the Hongmengdao Palace, and with just a few moves, you broke through the Immortal Emperor formation. The 3 powerhouses, expressions changed drastically. Human Emperor Fuxi quickly explained, "It's a misunderstanding. It's not that we don't trust you, sir. It's just that those things were left by Mount Tai Immortal Emperor. Without his direct instruction, we wouldn't dare to make decisions on our own. But you didn't listen to their explanations. If they wouldn't give it, you would take it yourself. Just as you were about to act, Mount Tai Immortal Emperor's divine statue on the ancestral star suddenly opened its eyes and appeared before you. You chuckled somewhat guiltily, "Big brother, how did you get here?" Mount Tai Immortal Emperor said, "If I didn't come out now, you would have plundered everything." Everyone now understood. You were indeed lying. Your skin was astonishingly thick as you said, "What are you talking about? We're all brothers, what's yours is mine." Mount Tai Immortal Emperor coldly snorted in annoyance and waved his hand, summoning 5 drops of Jeonmu tree heart sap. He gave you 3 of them, saying that was all there was, and the remaining 2 drops had other uses for him. Upon hearing this, you didn't say anything more. In any case, you didn't come in vain today. Afterward, you didn't immediately leave the ancestral star. You asked Mount Tai Immortal Emperor if he knew the origin of the immortal ancestor. You had devoured most of Yu Zondaozen's cultivation, and you didn't know if the immortal ancestor would come looking for trouble, so you needed to be prepared. Mount Tai Immortal Emperor's divine statue looked deeply at you and said, "The immortal ancestor erased his past, but his first appearance was during the creation of the profound Tao era. Some speculate that he might be a god of creation who did not perish. At the beginning of each epoch, when chaos was still undivided. Besides chaos' supreme treasure and innate spirits, a god of creation would also be born between heaven and earth. The sole mission of this god of creation was to open up a new epoch. His strength was so immense that even an immortal emperor would not wish to face him. However, after creation, the god of creation would usually die from exhaustion, and his body would nourish all things in later generations. If the immortal ancestor was a god of creation who did not perish, then he would not need to attain the immortal emperor Tao. Because he would inherently possess extremely formidable strength. If that were true, the origin of the immortal ancestor would be even more astonishing than you imagined. You nodded thoughtfully, then thanked Taiyu and departed. You originally wanted to ask him one more question. That was, whether he knew the mastermind behind your transmigration. Because even now, you found it difficult to deduce the whereabouts of that mastermind. Mount Tai Immortal Emperor had lived for so long, perhaps he knew a thing or two. However, you were also afraid. What if Mount Tai Immortal Emperor was the mastermind? If you asked him directly, wouldn't that be exposing his secrets? You didn't want to fall out with him yet, so you simply didn't ask. Upon your return, you immediately used the 3 drops of Jeonmu tree heart sap. The main body of your jade plate of fortune once again integrated over a dozen fragments. Now there were still 20-some fragments left, which would probably require 6 or 7 more drops of sap. Moreover, what you needed to repair in your hands was not just the jade plate of fortune, but also the myriad form seal. However, a portion of the myriad form seal remained in the hands of the cursed Immortal Emperor, so there was no need to rush for now. 3 months later, your main body had refined most of the treasures that increased comprehension ability. Your basic comprehension ability finally reached the Immortal Emperor level. But this was the limit. Afterward, refining other treasures that increased comprehension ability had almost no effect. However, this was already a huge improvement. You hadn't broken through to Immortal Emperor, but your comprehension ability broke through first, which was almost unheard of in the past. It was just that after your comprehension ability improved, the amplification of infinite enlightenment on comprehension ability decreased from 10,000 times to 7,000 times. But the jade plate of fortune could also amplify comprehension ability, compensating for this missing portion. Your comprehension ability could still maintain a terrifying amplification. Next, you began to integrate various different Tao principles into the Myriad Laws Tao principle. The Myriad Laws Tao principle was the king of divine laws. Now, it was time for it to become the king of Tao principles. You first integrated the supreme Tao principles you had already comprehended into it. Among them, the creation principle and yin-yang Tao principles had already been integrated by you. You now needed to integrate the other 8 supreme Tao principles. You were now simultaneously using infinite enlightenment and the jade plate of fortune. But when you used the jade plate of fortune, there was always a feeling of imperfection. This feeling was brought about by its artifact spirit. The jade plate of fortune was a chaos supreme treasure born at the beginning of the immortal Tao era. Later, under the power of creation, it shattered into hundreds of pieces, scattered everywhere. Its artifact spirit also disappeared at the same time. You originally thought its artifact spirit had been destroyed. Now that you had gathered all the fragments, you discovered that this was not the case. It was still alive and well, and its cultivation was not weak, able to influence the jade plate of fortune. And not just influence, you discovered that it was also attempting to communicate with the jade plate of fortune. You felt a bit strange. In the Chaos Realm and Tao Ruins Realm, who didn't know that the jade plate of fortune was yours? This artifact spirit didn't hide, and it even dared to try to communicate. Wasn't this purely seeking death? Unless it had an Immortal Emperor as a backer, it wouldn't dare to be so reckless. You frowned. So what if it had an Immortal Emperor as a backer? Daring to affect your cultivation already meant seeking death. You gave your Tao body a fragment of the jade plate and told him to follow the sensation to find the artifact spirit. Holding the fragment, your Tao body searched for a while and found that the artifact spirit of the jade plate of fortune did not seem to be in the current time-space. It wasn't even in the time-space of the immortal Tao era. No wonder it dared to try to communicate with the jade plate, it seemed it didn't know your reputation. Your Tao body traveled upstream in the river of time, heading to a more ancient epoch. The river of time was not continuous. Each epoch would be interrupted once. Even an ordinary quasi-immortal emperor would find it difficult to cross. Previously, you had always used the reincarnation authority as a springboard to go to other epochs. But now, you didn't need to. With your strength, you could freely go to any epoch. As soon as your Tao body left, a major event occurred in the Tao Ruins realm. That was, the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor personally arrived at the Curse Alliance, intending to slay Zhou Wuji. Zhou Wuji had indeed gone too far recently in the Curse Alliance, almost completely clearing out the forces left behind by the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor. But all of this was done under your instruction. The cursed Tao Immortal Emperor didn't come to find you, but instead went to bully an 8th stage quasi-immortal emperor, which was truly shameless. 632. Epic Cultivation, Emperor Huang Tian takes action. The secret of the Immortal Emperor, the 3 realms of Zan Dao. Fortunately, you had a Dao body stationed in the Dao Ruins realm, and it immediately initiated rescue. Zhou Wuji was only severely wounded and on the verge of death, having fallen unconscious, but he was not completely dead. You looked at the cursed Dao Immortal Emperor and laughed at him for bullying the weak. The cursed Dao Immortal Emperor coldly snorted, "Don't think that just because your identity is special, I wouldn't dare to kill you. Your words have already insulted an Immortal Emperor. I will give you a proper lesson, and no one else can say anything." With that, the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor attacked you. But soon, his expression changed slightly, and he said that you actually possessed half an epoch of cultivation. You knew about the epic child, but this, epic cultivation, was something you had heard of for the first time. And it sounded like it was some kind of unit of measurement. Information about immortal emperors was top secret. There wasn't much even in the Destiny Divine Hall, let alone the Dao Ruins realm. You asked the cursed Dao Immortal Emperor, what is epic cultivation? The cursed Dao Immortal Emperor frowned tightly, not answering, but instead attacked you even more fiercely. Seeing this, you used the Chaos Supreme Treasure, Hongmeng Dao Palace, fighting with great sweeps and clashing with the cursed Dao Immortal Emperor for 4 or 5 moves before gradually falling into a disadvantage. This cursed Dao Immortal Emperor was truly formidable. If it dragged on, you would undoubtedly lose. Just as you were pondering a way to escape, the void realm vibrated, and countless divine Dao phenomena appeared. A resolute-faced young man, exuding Emperor realm might, stepped through the air. You recognized him at a glance. This person was identical to the divine statue enshrined in the heavenly palace. Who else could it be but the Wild Heaven Emperor? The Wild Heaven Emperor's cultivation was even higher than that of the cursed Dao Immortal Emperor. He arrived on the scene, stopping the cursed Dao Immortal Emperor from continuing to attack you, and said, "Jehu, you have violated the rules." The cursed Dao Immortal Emperor snorted coldly, knowing that he could no longer take you down, and turned to leave. On the scene, soon only you and the Wild Heaven Emperor remained. You first thanked the Wild Heaven Emperor, then curiously asked, "May I ask, Heaven Emperor, what is epic cultivation?" The Wild Heaven Emperor said, "Epic cultivation is a term used to measure the realm of an immortal emperor. For an immortal emperor, completely experiencing an epic allows one to gain 1 epoch of cultivation. This is also why immortal emperors become more powerful the older they are." You nodded in sudden realization. You had thought this was just a rumor, but you didn't expect it to be true. The longer a quasi-immortal emperor lived, their strength might not necessarily increase. But if an immortal emperor lived longer, their strength would truly become stronger and stronger. However, what the Wild Heaven Emperor said was too brief, and you still had many unanswered questions. You wanted to continue seeking his guidance. For example, how many epochs of cultivation does an immortal emperor have when they first enter the Immortal Emperor realm? Besides relying on time accumulation, were there no other ways to increase epic cultivation? The Wild Heaven Emperor smiled helplessly, seeing your expression, and gave you an ancient book. The cover had the 3 large characters, "All Epics," written on it. He said this book could answer your questions. After speaking, he departed. The material of this ancient book was very peculiar, your divine thought could not penetrate it. You took the unconscious Zhou Wuji and returned to the Longevity Emperor Palace, taking out All Epics, and beginning to read it. The opening explained what epic cultivation was. The birth and destruction of a chaos realm is an epic. And between the birth and destruction of a chaos realm, the combined total strength of all living beings, worlds, and even the chaos origin during that period, is considered 1 epoch of cultivation. Regardless of the method or means, as long as one possesses 1 epoch of cultivation, they are considered to have broken through to Immortal Emperor and entered a new level. And the living beings of the Chaos Realm generally obtain 1 epoch of cultivation through the path of the Child of Extinction or the Epic Child. Afterward, as they experience other epochs, their cultivation will gradually increase. Of course, this experience does not mean that an Immortal Emperor can slack off. Instead, they still need to cultivate diligently. Diligently cultivating for 1 epoch, until mastering the chaos origin of that epoch, then one possesses the cultivation of a new epoch. It is worth noting that All Epochs mentioned that an immortal emperor's cultivation can only occur at the current time node. Transmigration back to the past is useless. Because, from the essence of time, those are historical illusions, illusions rather than reality. They cannot increase an immortal emperor's cultivation. This means that the Xuanpin Immortal Emperor of the 8th epoch cannot gain new epoch cultivation by transmigration back to the 1st epoch. He can only increase his cultivation through the next epoch. If this theory is correct, the cursed Dao Immortal Emperor, who broke through in the 7th epoch, should now be close to 3 epochs of cultivation. And his statement that you possess half an epoch of cultivation proves that you are only 1 step away from being an Immortal Emperor. Once you possess a complete epoch of cultivation, you will be a new Immortal Emperor. At this point, many mysteries were unveiled before your eyes. You finally understood the gap between yourself and other immortal emperors. However, all epics only mentioned this one way to increase epic cultivation. Whether immortal emperors have other ways to increase cultivation besides diligent cultivation, all epics had no relevant information at all. If there truly is only this one method, then wouldn't that mean that even if you break through to Immortal Emperor, you still wouldn't be able to defeat the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor? And it's very likely that you would never be able to defeat him, because you haven't experienced as many epics as he has. If you can't even defeat the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor, what would you use to challenge the Dark Corpse Ancestor, who is above Immortal Emperors? Your brows furrowed tightly. However, the most pressing matter was to first possess a complete epic of cultivation and break through to Immortal Emperor. After that, you should be able to learn more secrets. On the other side, your Tao body, searching for the Jade Plate of Fortune's artifact spirit, had already followed the sensation and arrived in the profound Tao era. You didn't expect that the artifact spirit of the Jade Plate of Fortune, born in the immortal Tao era, would actually be in the profound Tao era. Who brought it here? It couldn't have come by itself, could it? An artifact spirit, when separated from its main body, is very fragile. Even the artifact spirit of a Chaos Supreme Treasure is no exception. This is also why the Xuanpin Immortal Emperor and Diyuan Shengren chose reincarnation to cultivate again. Of course, as artifact spirits of Chaos Supreme Treasures, their potential is immense, making it easier for them to go further than ordinary beings. The profound Tao era has three major realms. They are the Da Luo realm, the Dizan world, and the realm of all beings. Among them, the Da Luo realm has the 33rd heaven. The 9 heavens of the 9 heavens and 10 earths, created by Yuzan Daozan, were modeled after the 33rd heaven of the Da Luo realm. Aside from the native inhabitants of the Da Luo realm, people from the lower realm only qualify for ascension after breaking through to Da Luo. And the Da Luo here have strength comparable to a golden immortal in the immortal Tao era. Your Tao body searched from top to bottom. First, it searched the Da Luo realm. However, no artifact spirit was found. Subsequently, you entered the Dizan world. This time, you made a significant discovery. 633. The Jade Disc Spirit, the Empress Xuanluo. All the dharmas are promoted, and the realm is shaken. The Earth Profound realm is divided into 72 states and has been in constant turmoil. In the past tens of thousands of years, a female emperor emerged, sweeping across the 4 directions and 8 wastes with a cultivation comparable to that of an immortal emperor, unifying the Earth Profound realm. This is the first time in history that the Earth Profound realm has been unified. This female emperor naturally received supreme honor and was revered by the world as the supreme and unsurpassed Sky Universe Profound Luo Great Thousand God. Most people call her the Profound Luo Female Emperor. The Profound Luo Female Emperor is cultivating in the Deep Palace. At this time, it has been several thousand years since she awakened her artifact spirit memory. In these several thousand years, she has been trying to communicate with the creation Jade Disc. Only recently has there seemed to be a response. Upon realizing this, she was overjoyed and naturally focused even more on sensing it. After all, that is a chaotic supreme treasure. If she can obtain even a few fragments, she will have hope of breaking through to the profound heaven realm, which is comparable to an immortal Venerable. The profound heaven realm is already the strongest existence below the 3 profound Tao Venerables residing in the 33 heavens. Only by reaching that step can she hope to survive the destruction of the profound Tao era and return to the immortal Tao era. And then collect other jade disc fragments. However, little did she know that her actions had already attracted a terrifying enemy. On this day, she was sensing as usual. But suddenly, she sensed that a fragment of the creation jade disc was rapidly approaching her. When she opened her eyes, a corner of a jade disc fragment emitting a hazy glow had appeared before her at some point. But there was also a young man in white. "Who are you?" Being able to appear before her silently, this person is definitely in the profound heaven realm. But the profound Luo female emperor was not flustered. She is a disciple of the grand profound lineage. Her master is Venerable Profound Nether, and her grand master is the grand profound Tao Venerable, who surpasses the profound heaven realm. Even if this person is in the profound heaven realm, what can he do to her? The young man in white examined her for a while, clicking his tongue in wonder. You discovered from the threads of fate on her that she was sent to this world by the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor. Venerable Diyuan, as the artifact spirit of the myriad phase seal, was also cultivated by the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor. What is he cultivating so many artifact spirits for? In any case, as an enemy, you must destroy whatever he wants to do. Moreover, you can also obtain the creation jade disc artifact spirit, which is killing two birds with one stone. You stretched out your hand and directly captured the profound Luo female emperor. As an existence who unified the earth profound realm, the profound Luo female emperor experienced her own insignificance for the first time. Just as she thought she couldn't escape the devil's clutches. The next moment, a whisk extended from the void. The profound Luo female emperor's face showed a look of pleasant surprise, because this was precisely her grandmaster's whisk, the Grand Profound Tao Venerable. The Grand Profound Tao Venerable is one of the strongest in the Profound Tao era, an existence with the hope of becoming an immortal emperor. With his intervention, she should be safe this time. However, the next moment, she was shocked. You saw you extend a finger, not only breaking the whisk but also entering the 33 heavens and destroying the Grand Profound Palace. Innumerable disciples of the Grand Profound Palace, only the eldest disciple who was listening to the Tao before the Grand Profound Tao Venerable survived. Everyone else, including the profound Luo female emperor's master, Venerable Profound Nether, all died in this catastrophe. In the 33 heavens, countless powerful beings were shocked. When did such a terrifying figure appear in the Profound Tao era? Subsequently, you took the profound Luo female emperor and left the profound Tao era, returning to the immortal Tao era. Soon after you returned, the Grand Profound Tao Venerable of the Three Profound Palace in the Tao Ruins realm came to your doorstep. He didn't dare to come and cause you trouble. 634. The magic of all methods, tied for second place. Breaking through the immortal emperor, paving the way. You did not become the epic child or the child of extinction. Many people speculated that although you are powerful, you are unlikely to become an immortal emperor in this epic. Because the immortal emperors of the past 8 epochs were all born from one of the two. Now that you have created the supreme Tao principles, many people are becoming uncertain. Can you really forge another path, breaking through to immortal emperor without being the child of extinction or the epic child? Besides that, many people are very interested in the myriad laws Tao principle you created. Every supreme Tao principles has its own powerful characteristics. What, then, are the characteristics of the myriad laws Tao principle? For an immortal venerable, comprehending the supreme Tao principles is not simple. But for a quasi-immortal emperor, it is not difficult. Many high-level quasi-immortal emperors quickly comprehended the myriad laws Tao principle. After all, this is the supreme Tao principles created by the co-lord of the Tao Ruins realm. Regardless of whether it is useful or not, they must at least show their loyalty. After comprehending it, many people discovered that its characteristic is that once comprehended, one can use the power of most Tao principles. Of course, it is certainly not as strong as the original. But the sheer quantity makes up for it. Its flexibility is directly maximized. Comprehending this one Tao principles is equivalent to comprehending many Tao principles. It can be said to be quite terrifying. Many quasi-immortal emperors originally just wanted to curry favor with you, but now they are promoting it to their descendants. Time flew by. Another 2 months passed, and you finally integrated the Space Tao principles, ranked 4th, into the Myriad Laws Tao principle. The Myriad Laws Tao principles ranking rose to 6th place. Those who cultivate the Myriad Laws Tao principle instantly felt that its difficulty had increased significantly. Clearly, this is you, the creator, strengthening it. Is the speed of this strengthening not a little too fast? Strengthening it once every 2 months. Another 3 months passed. You also integrated the time laws, ranked 3rd, into it. The Myriad Laws Tao principles ranking rose to 5th. Other cultivators of the Myriad Laws Tao principle were once again startled. Your strengthening speed is too terrifying. Even immortal emperors would be left in your dust. With your terrifying comprehension ability, can you really forge another path and break through to immortal emperor? Currently, among the 10 great Tao principles, only the Destiny Tao principles and Chaos Tao principle remain unintegrated into the Myriad Laws Tao principle. The difficulty of both is considerable, especially the Destiny Tao principles. You are not confident that you can integrate it into the Myriad Laws Tao principle. However, you feel that you are only a thin layer away from becoming an immortal emperor. No matter what, you must continue down this path. Afterward, you spent 2.5 years. Finally, you integrated the Chaos Tao principle into the Myriad Laws Tao principle. Your Myriad Laws Tao principle leapt to 3rd place. And at this moment, you finally sensed that your power began to undergo a transformation. You calculated that in 100 years, you would break through to Immortal Emperor. Most of the quasi-immortal emperors currently alive, besides you, have lived for more than one epoch. 100 years, for them, passes in the blink of an eye. If they could break through in such a short time, countless people would wake up laughing from their dreams. But for you, it is still too long. The sacrifice from the Destiny Divine Hall bought you 9 years of time. 635. The Curse Emperor takes action, the Immortal Emperor's first battle. All the trump cards are out, the Beast Immortal Emperor. You becoming an Immortal Emperor through an unconventional path means that others might also have hope of breaking through to Immortal Emperor in the future. If you knew their thoughts, you would surely laugh at their ignorance. To become an Immortal Emperor, one must possess the cultivation of an entire epoch. Yet, a peak quasi-immortal emperor only possesses 1/10 of an epoch's cultivation. This is a world apart from that goal. The reason you were able to forge an alternative path is twofold. Firstly, your foundation was solid. At the peak of quasi-immortal emperor, you already possessed half an epoch's worth of cultivation, far surpassing other peak quasi-immortal emperors. Secondly, your comprehension ability was terrifying, tens of thousands of times greater than that of an ordinary immortal emperor. You continuously fused and absorbed other Tao principles until the myriad laws Tao principle was on par with the chaos Tao principle, making up for the remaining half an epoch's worth of cultivation. Only then did you finally break through to Immortal Emperor. Of the two conditions above, besides the mysterious immortal ancestor, which of the quasi-immortal emperors in the Tao Ruins realm could possibly achieve them? If they were to follow your path, they would surely be silenced. You paid no mind to the excitement of those quasi-immortal emperors. After breaking through to Immortal Emperor, you began to perceive the changes within yourself. Firstly, your Tao power had completely transformed into epic power. You could easily use it to mobilize the origin of the entire chaos realm. Your Tao soul also underwent a certain transformation, acquiring an indestructible characteristic. Even if you encountered a powerful enemy and your physical body was destroyed, your divine soul would be extremely difficult to obliterate. Finally, there was the change in your physical body. At this moment, your physical body was like it was forged from the origin of the great Tao, capable of easily traversing various space-time dimensions. You did not need to pass through the river of time or the reincarnation authority. Merely by relying on your physical body, you could easily travel to various epochs. However, just after you had recently broken through, a large amount of curses descended upon the place where you were in seclusion. Subsequently, the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor appeared, his eyes filled with killing intent. He had finally waited for this day. According to the agreement among the Immortal Emperors could not casually attack those below the Immortal Emperor realm. But since you had become an Immortal Emperor, this restriction no longer applied. Furthermore, to ensure you passed these few years smoothly and to prevent the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor from secretly causing trouble, the other Immortal Emperors had also promised him that as long as you broke through to Immortal Emperor, they would no longer interfere in the animosity between the two of you. In other words, no one would come to help you anymore. Now that you had just broken through to Immortal Emperor, it was your weakest moment. The cursed Tao Immortal Emperor immediately came knocking. You shook your head, thinking, this guy really is a lingering spirit. Quote. But you were no pushover. Even though you had just broken through to Immortal Emperor, you were not afraid of the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor at all. You unleashed your epic power and began to mobilize the chaos origin. Unexpectedly, the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor unleashed epic power nearly 3 times stronger than yours, suppressing the chaos origin you had mobilized. I have 3 epochs of cultivation, what can you use to fight me? Quote. The cursed Tao Immortal Emperor smiled sinisterly, seemingly confident of victory. Eternal life Immortal Emperor is in danger. Quote. Many quasi-immortal emperors in the Tao Ruins realm exclaimed with emotion. You are the greatest prodigy of all time, but you still need time to grow. Why provoke an old brand Immortal Emperor? Quote. But the next moment, you took out the Chaos Supreme Treasure, Hanmeng Tao Palace. Your aura surged, increasing your cultivation by another epoch. This was the true power of a Chaos Supreme Treasure. Any complete Chaos Supreme Treasure could grant an Immortal Emperor an additional epoch's worth of cultivation. Quasi-immortal emperors simply couldn't unleash the full power of a Chaos Supreme Treasure. Of course, this increase was brought about by the Chaos Supreme Treasure, not the Immortal Emperor's own cultivation. But in battle, it was more than enough. You now possessed 2 epochs of cultivation, and the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor could no longer completely overwhelm you. However, he still held a certain suppressive advantage over you. The cursed Tao Immortal Emperor gritted his teeth in hatred when he saw this scene. If not for your future self snatching his cursed steel, he wouldn't be empty-handed. Next, he planned to wear you down to death. But just then, 3 more figures appeared on the scene. 2 of them each held a damaged Chaos Supreme treasure. The last one wielded several Chaos Spirit treasures. These were none other than your 3 Tao bodies. Seeing your 3 Tao bodies, all exuding Immortal Emperor aura, the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor exclaimed in horror, "How is this possible?" Quote, he naturally knew about your Tao body. As supreme beings, immortal emperors, it was almost impossible for any clone, incarnation, or Tao body to possess immortal emperor strength. What kind of Tao divine ability is this, to possess such power? Quote, at this point, the situation reversed. The cursed Tao Immortal Emperor's suppression of you began to collapse, and he was sent tumbling backward after being struck by the Hongmeng Tao Palace and 2 damaged Chaos Supreme treasures. You just wait for me. Quote, the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor, covered in blood, left a harsh threat and then fled. This time, not only did he fail to harm you, but he also ended up in an extremely sorry state, losing a great deal of face. The group of quasi-immortal emperors were dumbfounded, not expecting such an outcome. The cursed Tao Immortal Emperor was born in the 7th epoch, so how could he not defeat you, an immortal emperor from the 9th epoch? Could it be that becoming an immortal emperor through your method grants greater combat power than breaking through in the conventional way? Many people's imaginations ran wild, and they were greatly excited. Soon, a large number of people gathered, shouting the name of Eternal Life Immortal Emperor. Of course, this was because you had won. If the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor had been the final winner, they would have been shouting the name of the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor. You accepted the congratulations of the crowd. Previously, you had subdued them with your strength. Now it was different, now you had become the Immortal Emperor of the Immortal Tao era. That was an absolutely legitimate position. Whether the epoch was destroyed prematurely or extended was all within your thoughts. Of course, you were greatly virtuous and benevolent. The destruction of the Immortal Tao era, naturally, the later the better. According to your calculations, normally, there were still over 3 million years before the Immortal Tao era would enter destruction. It was still very early. After driving away the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor, you celebrated for 10 days in the Tao Ruins realm and the Chaos realm. These 10 days were a celebration for the Immortal Emperor. During these 10 days, Mount Tai Immortal Emperor of the Human Tao era, Wild Heaven Emperor of the God Tao era, Xuanpin Immortal Emperor of the Profound Tao era, and the Most Ancient Beast Tao Immortal Emperor all personally came to congratulate you. This elevated the festive atmosphere even further. It was your first time meeting the Beast Tao Immortal Emperor. He was the first Zaiyi in the Beast epoch, born with strength comparable to an Immortal Emperor. Later, at the end of the epoch, he cultivated to quasi-immortal emperor and then achieved Tao as an epoch child. Mount Tai Immortal Emperor told you that the Zaiyi Immortal Emperor was the most just in handling affairs, and many conflicts between immortal emperors were resolved by him. Previously, it was also he who had continuously warned the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor not to attack you before you broke through to Immortal Emperor. Upon hearing this, your expression changed, and you respectfully toasted the Beast Tao Immortal Emperor several more times. The Beast Tao Immortal Emperor also greatly admired you, saying that your breakthrough to Immortal Emperor at less than 200 years old was unprecedented and that your future held great promise. 636. The Immortal Palace of Immortality, the transformation of all things. After 3 epochs of cultivation, enter the mysterious space again. Half of the 8 prehistoric Immortal Emperors attended this celebration. It shows they really gave you face. As for the other 4 Immortal Emperors, the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor certainly wouldn't come. The Zhu Yan Immortal Emperor is currently missing, his whereabouts unknown. The Demon Path Immortal Emperor has long since defected to the darkness. The only one who could have come, the Soul Tao Immortal Emperor, for some reason, did not attend this time. You've always had a good memory. You remember who came. You remember even more clearly who didn't come. Since the Soul Tao Immortal Emperor didn't give you face, you won't give him face if you encounter similar situations in the future. 10 days later, the celebration concluded, and the Immortal Emperors departed one after another. The Xuanpin Immortal Emperor was the last to leave. He reminded you not to forget what you promised him, that Yuzan must be returned to him then. You smiled and said you hadn't forgotten. After the 4 Immortal Emperors left, your main body continued to cultivate in seclusion. Although you had achieved a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor, you still needed to be strict with yourself. You had relaxed for 10 days, it was time to continue working hard. After all, you hadn't forgotten that your current achievements were due to using the time others spent drinking tea for cultivation. It was hard work that created you, an Immortal Emperor under 200 years old. You cannot forget your roots. Moreover, more than 4 years have passed since the 9-year seal of the passage. You only have less than 5 years left to work hard. After that, you'll have to face the darkness directly. You didn't dare to relax at all. Although your Myriad Laws Tao principle is now ranked second alongside the Chaos Tao principle. It has only integrated the top 100 Tao principles so far, and there are still a large number of other Tao principles that haven't been integrated, so there's still considerable room for improvement. As for your Tao body, it established the Eternal Life Immortal Court. Countless powerful cultivators from the Chaos realm eagerly joined. Joining the Immortal Court meant becoming one of the Immortal Emperor's own people. The chance of surviving the epic ending calamity would also greatly increase. As for the Tao Ruins realm, you temporarily did not incorporate it into the Eternal Life Immortal Court's territory. After all, there were still many forces left behind by other Immortal Emperors there. For now, it was sufficient for it to exist as a loose alliance. A year and a half later, the Eternal Life Immortal Court began to take shape, its influence spreading across the various great worlds of the Chaos realm. And your main body had comprehended all 3,000 ranked Tao principles, integrating all of them, except for the Destiny Tao principles, into the Myriad Laws Tao principle. Your Myriad Laws Tao principle grew rapidly. It completely surpassed the Chaos Tao principle, becoming the true second, no longer merely tied. This also greatly increased your cultivation. At least by half an epoch. To increase your cultivation by half an epoch in just a year and a half. If this got out, it would scare the other Immortal Emperors to death. This speed was too terrifying. A normal Immortal Emperor would need to experience half an epoch, which is 70 to 80 billion years, to increase their cultivation by half an epoch. Yet you only took a year and a half. It was as if others were running normally, but you had directly evolved into the Flash. However, you were still not satisfied. Because of the 9-year period, only 3 years remained. At the current rate, you could at most increase your cultivation by another epoch. By then, your main body would have 2.5 epochs of cultivation. Even with the Hongmeng Tao Palace, you would only barely suppress the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor. You absolutely couldn't contend with the darkness. As for the Tao body, you discovered that the limit for each Tao body was 1 epoch of cultivation. This should be determined by the upper limit of the Hongmeng Tao Palace. After all, the Hongmeng Tao Palace could only temporarily increase your cultivation by 1 epoch. The 1 Qi transforming into 3 purities talent was also derived from the Hongmeng Tao Palace. Naturally, the Tao body found it difficult to exceed this upper limit. However, even if you were anxious, there was nothing you could do. During this time, you also sent your Tao body to find the Mount Tai Immortal Emperor, Wild Heaven Emperor, and others. You asked if there were any methods for rapidly increasing strength. For example, methods that could increase cultivation by several epochs in a year. As a result, they just gave you a sidelong glance and asked why you were still daydreaming when you were already an Immortal Emperor. If such a method truly existed, they would have long since beaten the darkness black and blue. Yet, even now, the strongest beast Tao Immortal Emperor only had 10 epochs of cultivation. One of those epochs of cultivation was even obtained by seizing a great opportunity from the darkness. But such an opportunity was rare and hard to come by. They advised you to honestly cultivate. Now it seemed that your method of improving the Myriad Laws Tao principle was indeed the fastest way to cultivate. Afterward, you continued to integrate other Tao principles. The further you went, the faster you integrated. For ordinary Tao principles, it only took a few incense sticks of time to integrate one. After another year like this, you integrated all Tao principles in the Chaos realm, except for the Destiny Tao principles, into the Myriad Laws Tao principle. Your Myriad Laws Tao principle began to undergo some kind of transformation. Half a month later, the transformation concluded. At this time, the Myriad Laws Tao principle emitted an aura that even made you feel alarmed. It seemed to have completed some kind of sublimation, becoming an existence on the same level as the Destiny Tao principles. And your cultivation suddenly doubled, reaching 3 epochs. Adding the Hongmeng Tao Palace in your Tao body. Now, the cursed Tao Immortal Emperor could be easily manipulated by you. Just after the myriad laws Tao principle completed its transformation, all cultivators who had previously gained entry to it instantly lost their connection to it. The myriad laws Tao principle seemed to have become unfamiliar again. These people were astonished, not knowing why such a change had occurred. When they tried to cultivate again, they found that the difficulty of cultivating the myriad laws Tao principle had sharply increased by a significant margin. It was no less difficult than the destiny Tao principles. Why did this change happen? What exactly did the eternal life Immortal Emperor do again? They were puzzled but greatly shocked. The various Immortal Emperors also noticed the anomaly. A Tao principle comparable to destiny actually emerged. They were quite clear about the implications behind this. Because the destiny Tao principles were not a product of the chaos realm at all, they were brought by an existence beyond the Immortal Emperor realm. Everything about that person had been erased. Only the beast Tao Immortal Emperor and the soul Tao Immortal Emperor knew his origin. The other Immortal Emperors only vaguely knew that such a person existed. Yet now, you were able to create a Tao principle comparable to destiny. Doesn't this mean you possess the potential to break through beyond the Immortal Emperor realm? The Mount Tai Immortal Emperor and others rushed to find you. This matter was too important, they wanted to confirm it with you. And they wanted to understand how you created it. However, they didn't even see your Tao body. Because at this moment, you had been brought into the mysterious space once again by the transcendent mark. The moment you entered, your Tao body simultaneously disappeared from the chaos realm. 637. The God of Creation. The secret of transcendence. It all depends on hard work, the way of immortality. Mysterious space, you entered it once in a simulation and once in reality. Counting it, this should be the third time. The previous 2 times, you couldn't clearly see anything in the mysterious space. Especially those 8 massive projections, you didn't even know what they were. This time, you have achieved a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor. You can finally see everything in the mysterious space more clearly. The space and all matter here are condensed from a strange power. This power surpasses Tao principles, surpasses chaos origin, and even surpasses destiny power, world-destroying power, and epic power. You also don't know what it is. Then, you turn your gaze to the 8 massive projections. At this time, your basic comprehension ability has reached Immortal Emperor, yet you still cannot discern their faces. So, you used infinite enlightenment. Then, you were dumbfounded. Because what you saw were 8 colossal giants, their bodies were the most perfect evolution of Tao. Countless dust-like worlds were constantly born and destroyed around them. Each of these worlds was as vast as a chaos realm. In them, some people achieved a breakthrough to Immortal Emperor, and some epics were destroyed. You even saw your own world around the second giant from left to right. You bowed respectfully and said, "Are you all the creators and gods of all worlds?" The first giant from left to right smiled and said, "You misunderstand, we all cultivate from acquired, it's just that our cultivation has reached the pinnacle of the known world, so we went to create other realms." Your heart yearned, and you asked what kind of realm that was. The second giant said, "Actually, it's not much higher than yours. Above, and then above Immortal Emperor, that is our transcendent realm." You thought, what the hell? Initially, these projections told you that Immortal Emperor was just the beginning. You thought they were boasting, but you didn't expect it to be true. Then how many epochs of cultivation must they have? Or perhaps it's no longer measured in epochs. However, you noticed a phenomenon. That is, in the worlds they created, there were always epic children and child of extinction. You asked in confusion, is there some special reason for this? The fifth giant said, "This is related to why we summoned you." Related to you? You were very surprised. The fifth giant continued, "The existences behind these 2 powers are of the same realm as us, but they were innately born. Even though we have a numerical advantage, we can only barely maintain a balance with them. Our existence, our power is infinite. This situation is clearly not normal. So we suspect that those 2 innate existences hold the ultimate secret of the world's core. And you are the person among countless realms who has the most hope of reaching our realm. As long as you successfully reach this level, you will break the balance, giving us a chance to find the ultimate secret of the world's birth and all origin." You didn't expect that the existences behind the child of extinction and the epic child had such astonishing origins and power. And your being highly valued was also related to them. Naturally, you readily agreed. Regardless of whether you can achieve it, you certainly can't skimp on the pleasantries. Afterward, Yu again showed a troubled expression and said, "In my current world, Immortal Emperor is almost the end." Yu asked the 8 mysterious existences if they could give you their cultivation experience to help you transcend faster. The first giant who spoke before, smiled again and said, "Those who learn from me live, those who imitate me die. We all opened our own Tao. If you learn from our experience, you will never be able to transcend. So, don't even think about it, kid." The last giant then spoke, "We see that the Tao principles you created are quite extraordinary. Perhaps you can follow this Tao all the way. You didn't expect your myriad laws Tao principle to have such potential." The 7th giant spoke, full of expectation, "Little friend, we are waiting for you." After he finished speaking, the transcendent mark in your mind shone brightly, and when you opened your eyes again, you were already back in the imperial palace of the Eternal Life Immortal Court. At this time, Beast Tao Immortal Emperor, Mount Tai Immortal Emperor, Wild Heaven Emperor, Xuanpin Immortal Emperor, and others had already gathered in the imperial palace. Seeing you suddenly appear without any warning, they were surprised. Especially Beast Tao Immortal Emperor Xieji, he had 10 epochs of cultivation, yet he couldn't even sense when you appeared. It seems the secrets on you are more than he imagined. Of course, they certainly wouldn't ask about things they shouldn't. They came this time to ask how you managed to elevate the myriad laws Tao principle to the same level as the destiny Tao principles. You said, "Well, that's all thanks to comprehension ability and effort." They clearly didn't believe you. If it was just by comprehension ability and effort, then wouldn't they have been able to do it long ago? Mount Tai Immortal Emperor even put his arm around your shoulder and said, "We're all brothers, how can you keep secrets from your brothers?" But, you were indeed telling the truth. You really relied on comprehension ability and effort. It's just that the Hongmeng Dao Palace might have given you a bit too much comprehension ability. However, this was clearly not the answer everyone wanted to hear. You had no choice but to say that you encountered a mysterious senior who was suspected to be above Immortal Emperor, and it was with his help that the myriad laws Tao principle underwent a transformation. Only then did everyone nod, as expected. Beast Tao Immortal Emperor asked, "Do you know the name of this senior?" You said you didn't know either. Perhaps when your cultivation becomes more profound, you will know. To increase the authenticity, you added, "The immortal ancestor has been missing for a long time. That senior might just be the immortal ancestor who successfully achieved a breakthrough above Immortal Emperor." Everyone's spirits lifted, and they asked if you could introduce them. You shook your head, saying that only if that senior actively sought you out would it be possible. You found it difficult to find him now. Everyone was a little disappointed. At this moment, Wild Heaven Emperor suddenly said, "The all laws in myriad laws Tao principle sounds like a hodgepodge. Now that it's on par with destiny Tao principles, have you considered changing its name?" You nodded. You actually had the same intention. You said that since you are an Immortal Emperor of the Immortal Tao era, you would change myriad laws Tao principle to Immortal Tao principles. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this, the expressions of the several Immortal Emperors all changed. Among them, Xuanpin Immortal Emperor stared intently at your face, in disbelief. You touched your face. "What's wrong? Is there something on your face?" After hastily bidding you farewell, the several Immortal Emperors left. You found their behavior strange. It's just a name change, why such a big reaction? 638. All paths return to one, the power of immortality. Reshape the system and cultivate the immortal path. Could it be that the name of these immortal Tao principles has offended some taboo? Who cares about that? It's already been changed. From now on, the myriad laws Tao principle, after its sublimation, shall be called the Immortal Tao principles. If this name truly offends some great taboo, I believe other Immortal Emperors would also remind you. If other Immortal Emperors haven't reminded you, that proves it's not a big problem. Next, you began to study the mysteries of the Immortal Tao principles. After the Immortal Tao principles sublimated, many new abilities appeared. However, as soon as it sublimated, you were pulled into the mysterious space, and upon returning, you dealt with several Immortal Emperors, so you haven't formally studied it yet. You discovered that the Immortal Tao principles already possess the characteristics of all Tao principles in this epoch, except for the Destiny Tao principles. One Tao can contend against myriad Tao. This characteristic can be called the unity of all laws. Secondly, the Immortal Tao principles can actually enhance your strength by absorbing the sentient power related to it. This is an astonishing discovery. This means you have a way to quickly increase your strength in a short time. You are now an Immortal Emperor of the Immortal Tao era. Countless sentient beings know of your existence. But only a handful know about the Immortal Tao principles. Because the Tao principles are on too high a realm. Because generally, only Immortal Emperors begin to come into contact with Tao principles. Below the Immortal Emperor, even if they know, they have little interest. Naturally, the sentient power generated is not much. No, you must change this situation. The more people who know about the Immortal Tao principles, and even cultivate the Immortal Tao principles, the more sentient power will be generated and the greater the improvement to your strength. If it continues with the current amount of sentient power, it would probably take 30 billion years for you to increase your cultivation by one epoch. For other Immortal Emperors, this is still very fast. After experiencing one epoch, one can increase their cultivation by several epochs. It won't be long before they can leave others behind. But for you, it's still too slow. However, the cultivation threshold for the Immortal Tao principles is too high, no less difficult than the Destiny Tao principles. Most people are destined to have limited interest. So, is there a way to lower its difficulty, or use other methods to collect sentient power related to it? You pondered for several days and finally thought of a method. That is to integrate the Immortal Tao system into the Immortal Tao principles as well. This way, almost all cultivators can come into contact with it. Wouldn't the difficulty of acquiring sentient power be reduced by countless times? However, there is also a hidden danger in doing this. That is, the Immortal Tao system was passed down by the Immortal Ancestor. There must also be the Immortal Ancestor's purpose and interests within it. By doing this, you are essentially uprooting someone else's foundation. Will the Immortal Ancestor come to settle accounts with you later? Never mind, what happens later will be dealt with later. The Immortal Ancestor has been missing for so long, he might even be dead. You can't just not improve your strength because you fear a missing person, can you? There are still 2 years until the passage to the Highland Ancestral Land reopens. At that time, you will face the darkness directly. You can't afford not to seize every opportunity to improve your strength. No sooner said than done, you began to attempt fusion. The Immortal Tao cultivation system includes 13 realms: Human Immortal, Earth Immortal, Heavenly Immortal, Profound Immortal, Golden Immortal, Ancestor Immortal, Supreme Immortal, Immortal Lord, Immortal King, Immortal Emperor, Immortal Venerable, Quasi-Immortal Emperor, and Immortal Emperor. As for below the Human Immortal, the cultivation system is relatively chaotic and has not yet reached the Immortal realm. You plan to first integrate these 13 realms into the Immortal Tao principles. How can they be integrated? Naturally, it's the Tao principles behind each realm. Most immortal cultivators, although they only begin to come into contact with Tao principles at the Immortal Emperor realm. But the influence of Tao principles is everywhere. It is like invisible mud and stones, constructing the grand building of the Immortal Tao system. Your Immortal Tao principles, all laws return to one. You spent less than a day integrating the systems of the 7 realms, from Human Immortal to Supreme Immortal, into the Immortal Tao principles. Afterward, from Immortal Lord to Immortal Venerable, it took you 7 days. The Quasi-Immortal Emperor after Immortal Venerable took much longer, a full half-month. As for the cultivation of the Immortal Emperor realm, it is not yet complete. Currently, only you are the pioneer. So, it cannot be said to be integrated into it. Only when it is perfected in the future can it continue to be integrated. After integrating the 12 realms from Human Immortal to Quasi-Immortal Emperor into the Immortal Tao system, you instantly felt the sentient power of the Immortal Tao principle surge. Within the Immortal realm, especially in the 9 heavens and 10 earths, all cultivate the Immortal Tao system. The sentient power it brings to you is immense. As for the lower realm, many people also know of the existence of immortals, which can bring a certain amount of sentient power. Now you feel that you only need about 1,000,000 years to increase your cultivation by 1 epoch through this sentient power. This speed is simply terrifyingly fast. Compared to the previous 30 billion years, it has increased by a staggering 30,000 times. To have such a significant improvement, you actually have to thank Yuzan Daozan. If he hadn't desperately spread the Immortal Tao, it wouldn't have been so easy for you to reap the benefits. Of course, it could also be said that all his previous efforts served as a dowry for you. 1,000,000 years is still too slow for you. Within the Immortal realm, not all dimensions cultivate the Immortal Tao. The realms below Human Immortal, with their large number of cultivators, also hold great potential. Next, you had your Tao body formulate a decree for the Eternal Life Immortal Court. That is, to spread the immortal Tao cultivation system to every corner. Abolish all cultivation systems except the immortal Tao. All who have already cultivated other systems must switch to cultivating the immortal Tao, or be directly executed. This decree, for those outside the immortal Tao system, was undoubtedly very cruel. As soon as it was issued, it caused an uproar in the chaos realm. After all, there are many people from other cultivation systems. For example, the divine demonic system, ancient god system, demonic path system, and demonic god system. Their spread in the chaos realm is quite extensive. Even in the 9 heavens and 10 earths, a small number of people cultivate these systems. These beings, added together, are countless. The younger generation might be fine, but for those who have cultivated to a certain realm, if they suddenly switch to cultivating the immortal Tao, wouldn't their Tao path be ruined? But this decree came from you, the eternal life Immortal Emperor. Even if they want to object, they must first convince you. Many foreign cultivators lamented, saying that as an Immortal Emperor, one should be inclusive. Being able to tolerate different cultivation systems can reflect the breadth of an Immortal Emperor's mind. When it reached your ears, you sneered. What breadth of mind? You only care about cultivation. If they don't contribute sentient power to you, then they are useless. The world dominated by the Eternal Life Immortal Court does not raise idlers. 639. The Eternal Devil Court. 9 realms. Cultivation methods, changes in the immortal map. Regardless of how the living beings opposed, under the iron-blooded methods of the Eternal Life Immortal Court, the immortal Tao system was rapidly promoted in every corner of the chaos realm. As for those who adamantly refused to change to the immortal Tao, they were directly captured by the Eternal Life Immortal Court, had their tendons pulled and skin flayed, and were refined into great medicine to supply those who had changed their cultivation. For a time, many other cultivators cursed the Eternal Life Immortal Court, calling it the Eternal Life Devil Court. The Eternal Life Immortal Emperor was the Eternal Life Devil Emperor. Let them curse. Anyway, it was almost the end of the epoch, and the Chaos Realm was about to be destroyed. You were just helping them to be reborn ahead of time. Besides the Chaos Realm, you also vigorously promoted the Immortal Tao system in the Tao Ruins realm. It was just not as drastic as the methods used in the Chaos Realm. Because there were still other Immortal Emperors present. You were not strong enough to contend with all Immortal Emperors alone. So the methods you adopted were relatively gentle. For example, those who were willing to change to the Immortal Tao were given certain rewards. At the same time, your main body was improving the realms below the human immortal. These realms were too chaotic. For instance, in the blood word plane where you were once born, realms like divine ability and saint had little connection to the immortal Tao. You planned to create a mortal cultivation system that could perfectly connect to the immortal Tao. A month later, you successfully created this system. From high to low, it consisted of 9 realms: Chi refining, foundation establishment, golden core, nascent soul, soul transformation, void refining, body integration, undergoing tribulation, and Mahayana. Among them, undergoing tribulation was already a semi-immortal realm, comparable to a quasi-emperor in the profound yellow great world. And Mahayana was comparable to a great emperor in the profound yellow great world, equivalent to a human immortal in the upper realm. As long as one underwent ascension to the upper realm, with immortal chi cleansing, and their mortal body transformed into an immortal body, they would reach the true human immortal realm. Furthermore, this immortal Tao mortal cultivation system you created incorporated the strengths of many schools, making its cultivation difficulty much lower than the Saint Great Emperor's system. The profound yellow great world could only produce one great emperor every 10,000 years, but it could produce dozens of Mahayana cultivators. As long as this mortal cultivation system spread, the immortal realm would become even more prosperous. So, what was the cost? Because this cultivation system was too powerful, it could easily deplete the world's origin chi. Therefore, the worlds of cultivators often entered an age of dharma decline periodically, allowing the world's origin chi to recover. One yin and one yang are called the Tao. This is also a balance of heaven and earth. It's impossible for a large number of cultivators to emerge without any consumption from heaven and earth. Anyway, it was almost the end of the epoch, so being powerful in cultivation was fine. The more high-level cultivators there were, the more collective Nian Li thought power they provided you, which was more beneficial than harmful in the short term. As for any after effects, let future generations deal with them. It shouldn't always be that predecessors plant trees for future generations to enjoy the shade. Future generations should also plant trees. Afterward, you also included this mortal cultivation system in the mandatory cultivation. All living beings in the chaos realm, below the human immortal, must cultivate this cultivation technique, even flying birds, beasts, demons, and ghosts were no exception. You wanted this cultivation technique to become a system accepted by all mortals. With the previous decrees, your attitude was clear. This system was quickly implemented. From now on, all worlds under the control of the Eternal Life Immortal Court must cultivate this system. You felt the collective Nian-Li thought power of the Immortal Tao principles rapidly increasing. If it were thoroughly implemented throughout the entire Chaos realm, you would probably only need tens of thousands of years to increase your cultivation by one epoch. 640. Attitude changes, Immortal Ancestors cultivation. Heaven swallowing and earth devouring art, heaven defying effect. However, although Mount Tai Immortal Emperor allowed you to enter his immortal cave, his attendant said that he was in seclusion and temporarily unable to see you. Is this a coincidence, or intentional? Why have everyone's attitudes changed so much since the last time you parted ways? You felt doubt and worry in your heart. But you still didn't give up and arrived in front of Wild Heaven Emperor's immortal cave. You originally thought you would be turned away again. Unexpectedly, Wild Heaven Emperor received you warmly. After 3 rounds of drinks, you asked Wild Heaven Emperor if Immortal Ancestor was about to return. Wild Heaven Emperor looked at you strangely and said he didn't know about that. You felt he was hiding something from you. But since he wouldn't say, there was nothing you could do. So you asked about Immortal Ancestor's strength. As the saying goes, know yourself and your enemy, and you will never be defeated. By understanding his strength, you could prepare for him sooner. Speaking of this, Wild Heaven Emperor immediately became energetic. He said how incredibly powerful Immortal Ancestor was, having single-handedly fought 7 Dark Immortal Emperors during the Demon Tao epoch. His cultivation was probably at least above 20 epoch. You didn't expect Immortal Ancestor's strength to be far beyond your estimation. You originally thought his cultivation wouldn't exceed 15 epoch. After all, Beast Tao Immortal Emperor, who had lived from the first epoch until now, only had 10 epoch of cultivation. One of those epoch of cultivation was even an opportunity seized from the dark forces. No matter how powerful Immortal Ancestor was, his cultivation shouldn't exceed 15 epoch, right? Now it seemed you were too conservative. You currently only had 3 epoch of cultivation, too far from Immortal Ancestor. 20 epoch of cultivation, you wondered how Immortal Ancestor achieved it. You raised your question. Wild Heaven Emperor told you not to ask him, as he didn't know either. In any case, Immortal Ancestor was already extremely powerful the moment he appeared. When people asked about his origins, he didn't say, only smiling and saying that they would know in the future. You then asked about Immortal Ancestor's personality. Given what you did to Yu Zhan Daozhen, would he seek revenge on you in the future? Wild Heaven Emperor said that Immortal Ancestor enjoyed making friends and generally wasn't petty, but he was also quite protective of his own. As for whether he would trouble you, it was hard to say. Hearing the words, protective of his own, your expression changed slightly. Wild Heaven Emperor clearly knew about the grievances between you and Yu Zhan Daozhen. He laughed and said there was a way to resolve it. That Immortal Ancestor was very fond of collecting Chaos Supreme Treasure. If you could give him 1 or 2 Chaos Supreme Treasure as an apology, he probably wouldn't trouble you. Hearing this, you felt much more at ease. You now possessed 3 Chaos Supreme Treasure: Hongmeng Dao Palace, Jade Plate of Fortune, and Myriad Form Seal. Among them, only Hongmeng Dao Palace was complete, but it had accompanied you for so long, you certainly wouldn't give it away. All the fragments of the Jade Plate of Fortune had been collected by you, but it was of great use to you, so you likewise wouldn't give it away. As for Myriad Form Seal, its usefulness to you was relatively small. Having the opportunity to complete it and give it to Immortal Ancestor was indeed a viable option. After obtaining a solution, your Tao body bid farewell to Wild Heaven Emperor and returned to the Chaos Realm. A month later, under your main body's continuous research, day and night, you finally figured out how to devour Chaos Supreme Treasure. The core was still to utilize Immortal Tao principles. Immortal Tao principles had a very powerful characteristic, which was to devour the Nian-Li of all living beings and transform it into cultivation. Since the Nian-Li of all living beings could be devoured, then if you change the devouring target to Chaos Supreme Treasure or other resources, it should work just as well. Moreover, you could also utilize the talent of the Hunyuan Holy Body from your time in the profound Yellow Great World, which devoured the origin power of the world and magic treasure to strengthen the physical body. To perfect this method, 3 months later, you combined these two characteristics and created a method. Its name was Devouring Heaven and Earth Art. It primarily enhanced cultivation by devouring the magic treasure and spiritual objects of worlds. You still had a large amount of resources that were difficult to utilize. This was a perfect opportunity to devour them and transform them into cultivation. Of course, their effectiveness would certainly not be as good as Chaos Supreme Treasure, but accumulating small amounts would also be extremely substantial. However, at this time, the Devouring Heaven and Earth Art was not yet perfect. Firstly, the conversion efficiency after devouring was too low, and secondly, it could not devour Chaos Supreme Treasure. You continued to perfect it. Another 3 months later, you finally perfected the Devouring Heaven and Earth Art to its extreme. Its devouring efficiency not only greatly improved, but it could also easily devour fragments of Chaos Supreme Treasure. As for complete Chaos Supreme Treasure, you only had Hongmeng Dao Palace, and you certainly couldn't easily try it now. But according to your calculations, it could definitely be devoured. With this, you finally possessed a means to rapidly increase your cultivation. Devouring Heaven and Earth Art was for short-term increases in your cultivation. Because the resources in the Chaos realm were ultimately limited, it was impossible for you to devour indefinitely. But it could help you overcome the crisis of the dark forces. And after that, you would primarily rely on immortal Tao principles to devour the Nianli of all living beings, thereby accumulating cultivation to achieve a breakthrough beyond the Immortal Emperor realm. With both methods working together, it was simply perfect. You were full of vigor at this moment, seemingly already seeing the realm beyond Immortal Emperor beckoning to you. Now everything was ready, all that was left was to devour. You began by starting with the resources you had already collected. These resources were long useless to an Immortal Emperor. Now, being able to exert their remaining heat was their honor. 3 days later, you devoured all the resources in your hand. Your cultivation increased by 1/10 of an epoch. It seemed like not much, but it was completed within just 3 days. In other words, as long as the resources were sufficient, with your current devouring speed, you could completely increase your cultivation by 1 epoch in a single month. And the current strongest beast Dao Immortal Emperor in the Chaos realm only had 10 epoch of cultivation. You now already had 3 epoch of cultivation. This meant that you only needed 7 more months to be on par with him. This was the terrifying power of the Devouring Heaven and Earth Art. If it were to spread, you had no doubt it would cause a bloody storm among the Immortal Emperors. Of course, the prerequisite was that they had to gain an initial understanding of the Immortal Tao principles before they could cultivate this method. Even if they perfected the Immortal Tao principles, they could only possess half of your devouring speed as the master of the Tao principles. However, you could not possibly impart the Devouring Heaven and Earth Art, which you had painstakingly created. It wasn't that you were disloyal. It was just not worth it. The scene of being betrayed by these Immortal Emperors in the previous simulation was still vivid in your mind. Even if you were kind-hearted, you had to keep your guard up.